never planned on ending up at a place like the Willow Lake Motel. If you'd told me a year before that I'd be sitting behind a warped wooden counter in the middle of West Texas, smiling politely at strangers and sliding metal keys across the desk, I'd have laughed in your face. But life has a way of cornering you, of pushing you where you swore you'd never go. I left Dallas in a rush. I don't talk about my brother much, not anymore. It's easier to pretend he never existed than to explain what happened, how people still look at me when his name comes up. Ryan was 17 when he was killed. Wrong place, wrong time, they said. A liquor store holdup gone sideways. He wasn't the one holding the gun. He wasn't even old enough to buy the whiskey they accused him of trying to steal. But the store clerk swore he had a knife, and the police swore the footage backed it up, even though I've watched it so many times, and all I see is my kid brother holding his hands up, terrified, trying to talk his way out of something he didn't start. The bullet caught him in the chest, and that was the end. Case closed. People said he was no angel, like that excused it. Like a few bad friends and some skipped classes made him guilty enough to die. The clerk never faced charges. The cops never blinked. And I never forgave them. Or myself. Because if I'd gone to pick him up that night like I promised, he wouldn't have been there at all. So when folks ask why I left Dallas, why I drifted west, why I took a nothing job at a forgotten motel, well, I just say I needed a change. What I don't say is that I wanted to disappear, the same way Ryan did, only slower. The Willow Lake Motel wasn't much to look at. Cabins slouched in a half circle, leaning like tired old men in the sun. The grass was long dead. The sign buzzed, faintly with its single word, vacancy, like a dying insect. It sat off Highway 82, outside the small town of Lockhart, where folks minded their own business, because if you didn't, you ended up tangled in someone else's. The first day, I pulled into the gravel drive, my beat-up Toyota coughing out dust behind it. I stepped out and shaded my eyes against the late summer sun. That's when I saw her. "You must be the new girl," a woman called from the porch. She was rocking in a chair, a chipped coffee mug steady in her hand despite the heat. Her name was Norma Talbot. She had the kind of face you could imagine, smiling in a church pew, but her eyes were sharper, too sharp, like knives wrapped in paper. "Claire," I said, hoisting my duffel bag. Her smile widened, but it didn't warm. "Well, Claire, welcome to Willow Lake. You'll be working the front desk mostly. Reed'll show you the ropes." Reed Talbot, her husband. He appeared in the doorway like he'd been waiting, tall and straight-backed, gray streaking his temples. His blue eyes should have been soft, but they weren't. They had weight, like he was measuring me before I'd even spoken. "We keep things simple here," he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Guests come, stay the night, move on. We don't bother them, they don't bother us." I forced a nod. Sounds fair. But something about the way he said it landed heavy in my gut. The first week was uneventful. I checked in a handful of travelers, truckers with dust on their boots, couples who barely spoke to each other, a family with 2 crying kids who seemed too tired to notice how grim the place looked. They came. They left. At least, that's what I thought. But then there were the cars. A blue sedan that pulled into cabin 4 one night, its windows rolled down. The driver, a wiry man with a nervous smile. 2 days later, the car was still there, but empty. Reed told me. Checked out early, left before sunrise. But I knew I hadn't handed him the key. Then a young woman with a backpack, hair tied in a messy bun. She stayed in cabin 2. I saw her scribbling in a notebook on the porch at dusk. The next morning, she was gone. Her backpack too. But the curtains in her room stayed drawn, and Reed waved me off when I asked about it. "Folks move on quick," he said. No use worrying. But I did worry. Because my brother moved on quick too. And they'd called it justice. The first time I heard it, I thought it was nothing. Just the motel settling. I was sweeping the office floor near midnight, the neon sign humming through the glass, when I heard a sound. Knock, knock, knock from the wall behind the desk, not the door. The wall. I froze, broom clutched tight. The sound didn't come again, but the silence that followed was thicker than before, like the air itself was listening. The next day, over coffee, I mentioned it to Norma. I thought I heard something last night, from the wall. She didn't even blink, just smiled faintly and stirred her cup. Old wood creaks. This place has been standing longer than you've been alive. Don't let it spook you. Her answer was too quick, too smooth. That night, it came again. Knock, 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 knock. 3 short, 1 long, deliberate. I pressed my ear to the wall. My heart thudded so hard it drowned out everything else. For a moment, I thought I heard a whisper too faint to catch. I backed away, trembling, whispering, "Who's there?" But the only answer was silence. The dreams followed. Dreams of Ryan. But not Ryan as I remembered him. Ryan in a dark room, damp walls pressing close, his hands bound, his eyes wide. He mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then I'd wake, the pattern of knocks echoing in my skull. 3 short, 1 long. I started paying attention, writing it down. At first it seemed random, but then I realized it wasn't. It was a code. Morse. Maybe, though I didn't know enough to be sure. But I knew one thing. It was meant for me. One evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, I saw her. A girl standing outside cabin 6. She couldn't have been more than 19. Pale skin, hair falling in tangled waves, lips moving soundlessly. When I stepped toward her, she lifted her hand as if pointing at something, then vanished. Just gone, like smoke and wind. My legs shook as I stumbled back. That night the knocks came again, harder, insistent. I pressed my hand to the wall, whispering, "Tell me, please, tell me." And for the first time, I understood. 3 short, 1 long, again and again, over and over. Guilty. The word slammed into me like ice. I didn't sleep. I sat up in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the desert outside, cicadas droning like static. When the knock came again at 3 a.m., I whispered back, "I'm not guilty. I didn't do anything." But the silence that followed felt unconvinced. Thawed. Next day, Reed cornered me outside the office. "You're pale," he said, studying my face. "Everything all right?" "Just tired." His gaze lingered, heavy. "Best not to let your mind wander. Desert plays tricks. Makes you see things that aren't there." But the desert didn't. Knock on walls. The desert didn't whisper. That evening, I saw Reed carry a lantern toward the maintenance shed. He moved like it was routine, like he'd done it every night for years. I followed at a distance, heart rattling my ribs. He slipped inside, the door groaning. I crept closer. The smell hit me first. Damp earth, mildew, something coppery. I pressed my ear to the door. Voices. Low, urgent. 2 of them, layered perfectly. Like one voice split in 2. Reed and Norma. I should have run. But I didn't. I pushed the door open. The air inside was thick, almost liquid. My lantern barely cut through it. Stairs led down into black, and without thinking, I descended. Each step wailed beneath me. The smell grew stronger, clinging to my throat. The chamber at the bottom wasn't big, but what it held, 4 shapes slumped against the wall, bodies in varying states of decay, and above them, nailed to plywood, names written in red. Dates. And beneath each, the same word scrawled again and again, guilty. My breath caught. I staggered back, bile burning my throat. That's when I felt it, warm breath against my neck. I spun, lantern shaking. No one, just shadows, pulsing like they were alive. When I looked back, one of the bodies, one of the women, had her eyes open, clouded, milky, staring at me. Her lips moved, shaping the same pattern I'd heard on the wall. 3 short, 1 long. I bolted up the stairs, and Reed was waiting at the top. His face calm, his eyes steady. "You understand now?" he said. Norma stepped into the doorway, her smile gone, her voice soft as a lullaby. The world failed them. We gave them justice. Justice. My brother's name screamed in my head. Ryan. Shot. Branded. Guilty when he wasn't. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came, because I understood something in that moment. Something that turned my blood to ice. They weren't just talking about those bodies. They were talking about me. I don't remember climbing the stairs back into the shop, only the way my hands shook against the counter as I dialed 911. My voice cracked when I spoke to the dispatcher, and I wasn't sure if I was making sense. I told them everything. The Talbots, the board, the trapdoor, the knocking that wouldn't stop echoing in my head. But even as I said the words, I realized how impossible it all sounded. My own voice betrayed me. Unsteady, panicked, almost deranged. The operator promised someone would be on the way, but the longer I sat there staring at the door, the more I doubted they'd come in time. What if the Talbots came back first? What if they'd been listening the entire time, just waiting for me to make the call so they could add me to their list? I pressed the receiver so hard against my ear I thought the plastic might crack, listening for sirens, listening for anything at all besides the dead air of the night. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, a sharp, insect-like drone that seemed louder now than ever before. And then the knocking came again. 3 short, 1 long. I froze, phone slipping from my hand. The sound wasn't coming from below this time. It was coming from the front door. I turned slowly, heart hammering, and there it was. The faint outline of a figure standing just beyond the glass, unmoving, pale. I couldn't see a face, only the faint suggestion of long hair hanging limp and wet, plastered across shoulders. The figure's hand lifted, pressed against the glass, and then the knocking pattern repeated. 3 short, 1 long, I whispered, almost without realizing it. I hear you. And then the lights flickered. When they steadied again, the figure was gone. The phone on the counter blared static, sharp and deafening. I grabbed it with trembling fingers, but the line was dead. Not just disconnected, dead, as if the cord had been cut. The store was silent now, except for my own pulse rushing in my ears. I was alone, but I wasn't. I should have run. I should have pushed through those doors and bolted into the night, cops or no cops. But the knocking had become more than a sound to me. It was a message. It was the one thing tethering me to the thought that I wasn't losing my mind. If someone had been trying to warn me, then running meant ignoring them. It meant leaving them behind again, like I had with my father. So instead of fleeing, I picked up the flashlight I'd left on the counter and walked back to the trapdoor. The air was colder this time. My breath fogged in the beam of light. I pulled the trapdoor open with a slow, heavy groan, the wood swelling as though it resisted me. And then I descended, every step an act of will against my body's screaming instinct to turn back. The basement hadn't changed, but it felt alive now. The air was thick, humming with presence. I could see the board still waiting on the wall, the word guilty staring down at me, but it no longer felt like the center of the room. My eyes kept drifting to the far corner, where a shadow clung thicker than the others. That's where the knocking came from. This time I didn't whisper. I forced my voice into the dark. What do you want me to see? The flashlight trembled in my hand, and in its jittering beam I saw it, a girl, or what was left of her. She looked no older than 17, her face pallid, eyes sunken yet burning, with recognition. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. Then she lifted one arm and pointed, not at me, not at the door, but at the board. The flashlight flicked once, twice, and then the letters blurred. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but no. The chalk marks themselves were shifting, erasing, reordering. One word melted into another until I could see the truth scrawled across it. Claire. My knees buckled. The girl's mouth moved again, faster now, desperate, her eyes locked on mine. And then the knocking came again, loud enough to rattle the pipes. Overhead, 3 short, 1 long, not a warning, A countdown. The trapdoor slammed shut above me. I screamed and scrambled back, clawing at the steps, but I could already hear them, their voices, calm and measured, floating through the wood like smoke seeping into a closed room. Justice must be done. The Talbots. I threw my shoulder into the trapdoor, but it wouldn't budge. Their weight was on it, pressing me down into the dark. The girl was gone, the corner empty, but her knocking remained in my head, pounding against my skull. They spoke, again their voices weaving together, eerily identical. You've hidden too long. The guilty always reveal themselves. I didn't do anything, I screamed. My voice cracked on the last word, my throat raw with terror. You're insane. You're killing innocent people. A pause, and then their reply, calm and unshakable. Innocence is just another kind of lie. The flashlight flickered once more, then went out, plunging me into complete blackness. I could hear the sound of something dragging across the floor above, something heavy being moved. My chest heaved, every breath shallow and ragged. And then the trapdoor creaked open. Light flooded down, blinding me. And for a moment, I thought it was salvation. The police maybe, or someone who'd heard my screams, but when my eyes adjusted, it was only them. The Talbots silhouetted in the frame, faces unreadable, eyes sharp with a zeal that chilled me more than any darkness could. They descended slowly, deliberately, as though savoring each step. The basement seemed to shrink around them, the air pressing in tighter, the ceiling lower. I backed away until my spine hit the cold stone wall. Why me? I whispered. Mr. Talbot's lips curled in something between a smile and a sneer. Because you know. Know what? My voice was barely sound, a trembling thread of breath. Mrs. Talbot leaned closer, her hair brushing my cheek, her voice intimate, poisonous. You know what you did, or what you didn't do. It makes no difference. My chest collapsed inward. My father's face flashed in my mind. The night I walked away, the night I didn't answer his call, the night I let the guilt rot in silence. They weren't punishing criminals. They were punishing the broken, the haunted, the unlucky. People like me. The knocking thundered again, this time so loud it shook the floor. Dust rained down from the beams. The Talbots turned sharply, their eyes narrowing, but I didn't waste the chance. I lunged past them, shoving with every ounce of strength I had. Mrs. Talbot stumbled into her husband, both of them crashing into the wall, and I bolted up the stairs two at a time. The trapdoor slammed behind me, but I didn't look back. I ran through the store, the aisles a blur, and burst through the front doors into the cold night. Sirens wailed in the distance. I staggered into the parking lot just as headlights swung into view. A patrol car screeched to a halt, and two officers spilled out, guns drawn. I tried to scream at them, to tell them the Talbots were inside, but the words tangled in my throat. All I could manage was a shaking finger pointed toward the store. They didn't hesitate. They stormed inside. I collapsed on the pavement, chest heaving, the night sky wheeling above me in dizzying circles. The cold seeped into my bones, but I didn't care. I was free. I was alive, or so I thought. Because as the officers disappeared into the store, I heard it again. Not from inside, not from below, but from behind me. 3 short, 1 long. I turned slowly, every nerve screaming not to. There she was, the girl, standing at the edge of the lot, pale and hollow, her eyes fixed on mine. She lifted her hand in the same slow motion as before, palm facing me, fingers curled slightly, and then faintly beneath the wail of sirens and the pounding of my blood, I heard her voice at last. Run. The lights of the patrol car flared, blinding, and when I blinked them away, she was gone. But the knocking wasn't. It followed me into the ambulance, into the hospital, into every sleepless night that came after. No matter where I went, no matter how loud the world around me became, it always found its way through. 3 short, 1 long, like a heartbeat I could never escape. Sometimes I think it's a warning. Sometimes I think it's a sentence waiting to be carried out. And sometimes, in the quietest hours of the night, I wonder if the Talbots were right. If maybe I was guilty all along, and the knocking is just the sound of justice catching up to me. believe silence was safety. That was my mistake, the lie I clung to when I first started taking house-sitting jobs out in the woods. Everyone else thought I did it for the money, or the chance to snoop through other people's carefully arranged lives, but that wasn't the truth. What I really wanted, what I thought I needed, was space to hear myself think. The city had a way of clawing inside your head with its endless clamor. The thin walls where you couldn't help but overhear fights between couples who hated each other. The wail of sirens at 2 a.m, horns blaring until you wanted to claw at your own ears. It was a kind of static that never stopped, but the woods were supposed to be different. Silence, stillness, a place where you could hear your own heartbeat and let it slow down. That was what I thought I was buying myself every time I said yes to watching someone's house. I didn't realize until too late that silence itself can be noisy, that it can get inside you and grow teeth. The lake house in Twin Pines seemed perfect, at first. The owners, an older couple with kind faces and the sort of gentle banter that comes from decades of marriage, were leaving for 2 weeks to go to Hawaii. They had a golden retriever, Bear, who was sweet enough to be a cliché. Fur like spun honey, eyes like melted amber, the kind of dog who could have been photographed for a greeting card. They asked for simple things: feed him, water the succulents, lock the doors at night. That was it. Easy money. The house itself was everything a city girl like me thought she wanted. Tucked back on a winding gravel road that crunched satisfyingly under tires, surrounded by towering pines that bent together, at the top like a cathedral ceiling. Inside it was airy and light, with floor-to-ceiling windows that gave you the illusion you were living inside the forest itself. A wraparound deck looked out over a still lake, so clear it reflected the trees in perfect symmetry. There was a hot tub on the deck, still smelling faintly of chlorine, as if the water hadn't been changed long enough to soak into the wood. The first 2 nights, I convinced myself I was happy. I slipped into a rhythm almost instantly. Wake, feed Bear, walk the trail along the lake, take photographs during golden hour, then curl up on the deck with a book or tea. Bear was calm, patient, a dog who almost never barked. The only sound he ever made was a faint huff through his nose when deer wandered too close to the yard, but even then, small things pricked at me. The first night, when I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I thought I heard a faint shift above me, like wood groaning under weight. I told myself it was the house settling. Old wood always moved when the temperature dropped. Still, I found myself lying there stiffly, listening harder than I wanted to. The second night, Bear paced. He walked the hallway, nails clicking softly, against the floorboards, back and forth until finally curling up at my feet. His head lifted once or twice, ears twitching toward the kitchen. I told myself he was restless, maybe missing his owners. But when I reached down to scratch behind his ears, I felt how tense his body was, the way his muscles twitched beneath the fur. I didn't listen. By the third night, the silence had grown teeth. Mist drifted across the lake, dragging itself across, the surface like a living thing. I curled on the deck with chamomile tea, zipped up in a hoodie, staring at how still the water was. Beside me, Bear shifted. At first I thought he was only readjusting, but then his body went rigid, ears pinned back. Slowly, he stood, turned toward the sliding glass door behind me, and growled. Not a bark, not a whine, a growl. Low, steady, vibrating through his chest. Every nerve in my body lit up. I turned, staring at the reflection in the glass. All I saw was myself, faintly lit by the kitchen light. But Bear didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed, his body taut. Bear, I whispered. My throat dry. What is it, boy? He didn't blink, didn't stop. I tried to tell myself it was a raccoon, a coyote maybe, something small, explainable. That would have been fine, normal. But Bear bolted. He shot past me into the house, nails scraping on hardwood, his body vanishing, around the corner with a sound like claws on glass. I nearly spilled my tea, heart pounding so loud it made me dizzy as I ran after him. He had stopped in front of the hallway closet, rigid, hackles raised, teeth bared. A rumble vibrated low and endless from his chest. My stomach turned to stone. That closet, I'd opened it before. Coats, umbrellas, a vacuum. Harmless. Forgettable. But now the air in the hallway felt thick, heavy, pressing against me from all sides. I should have left it. I should have turned away. But instead, I stepped closer. The door wasn't shut fully, just an inch open. Enough to see inside. I leaned forward, heart hammering, and in that inch, something stared back. Eyes. Human eyes, flat, unblinking, cold. They weren't surprised. They weren't scared. They just watched me, like they'd been waiting for me to finally look. I screamed so loud my throat ripped raw, the sound crashing back at me until it felt like I was drowning. In it, that was when Bear barked, sharp, explosive, rattling the walls. I grabbed his collar with both hands, dragging him backward even as he lunged forward. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped my phone. Somehow I fumbled to dial 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, grounding, the only thing holding me together. Stay hidden. Breathe. Officers are 8 minutes away. 8 minutes. I shoved a dresser against the bedroom door, jammed a chair under the knob, pressed my back against the wall with Bear pressed against my side, growling low and steady. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind like someone brushing past the walls. 8 minutes stretched like an eternity. When the knock finally came, 3 sharp raps, deliberate, followed by a voice calling, "Sheriff's office." I nearly collapsed from the sound of it. I shoved the dresser aside, ran into the hallway, called out, "Back here!" 2 deputies moved fast, clearing the spaces with steady efficiency. The closet first. Empty. Then the attic. Empty. The crawl space. Empty. No broken locks. No forced entry. Every window sealed. Nothing. The longer they searched, the more insane. I felt like my mind had betrayed me. Until one deputy stepped onto the deck. "Ma'am, you might want to see this." I followed, heart still slamming. In the bushes beneath the balcony lay debris, greasy fast food wrappers, a half-empty water, bottle with teeth marks in the cap, a crumpled sleeping bag dusted with pine needles, and next to it a laminated badge. The name was smeared, but the photo was clear. Pale, thin, hair receding. The deputy sighed. "He's been missing since January. Walked off his delivery route, never came back." That was when I understood. He hadn't broken in. He'd been here. Already. Living inside the house. That was when I understood. He hadn't broken in. He'd been here already. Living in the house with me. Moving through crawl spaces. Slipping down at night to eat scraps. Stretching his legs while I slept. The thought hollowed me out until I felt like nothing but bones rattling in my own skin. But the strangest part was what hadn't happened. Nothing was stolen. No valuables, no food, no cash. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about harm, not yet. It was about being close. That realization sat heavier than the silence itself. The deputies stayed until nearly dawn, combing the property, their radios crackling against the dead stillness of the woods. They asked me questions in quiet, practical voices. Had I noticed anything before tonight? Strange noises, odd smells, items misplaced? I answered in a blur. Yes, a sound above me. Yes, Bear had been restless. No, I hadn't thought much of it. Each admission made me feel smaller, guiltier, like I'd ignored every sign. When they left, they told me they'd increase patrols in the area. They told me to lock the doors, keep the phone by my bed, call for anything, even a sound. They said all the things they were supposed to say. But I could see in their eyes the same thought I couldn't stop thinking. Whoever had been in that closet hadn't run far. I didn't stay. I packed a bag with shaking hands, threw clothes into it without folding, scooped up my laptop and camera, and left the rest. I drove into town with Bear beside me, his head pressed against my arm as if to keep me steady. I stayed with a friend, barely able to explain what had happened without my voice breaking. But even away from the lake house, I didn't feel safe. Because silence follows you. It seeps into the cracks of wherever you go. It waits. I started to Noticed things in my friend's house, tiny things. A misplaced glass, a door that creaked open an inch more than I remembered leaving it. Once, when I was showering, I thought I heard footsteps outside the bathroom door, faint but deliberate. I told myself it was nothing, but when I pulled the curtain back, dripping and shivering, the hallway beyond looked too still, as if it had just swallowed someone whole. At night, Bear would stiffen suddenly, staring at corners of the room, his body rigid. He'd growl just once, low and certain, then go quiet. The sound would stick inside me like a splinter. The longer it went on, the more frayed I became. Sleep turned shallow, fractured. Every creak in the walls jolted me awake. I began double and triple checking locks, pressing my ear against closet doors, staring at the ceiling where the attic hatch sat, silent and sealed. People stopped asking about it after a while. At first, everyone wanted the story: neighbors, co-workers, acquaintances who leaned in close, eyes wide. But as the weeks passed, they didn't want to hear it anymore. Or maybe they didn't want to believe it. When I mentioned the eyes in the closet, someone actually laughed and said, "Sounds like a campfire story." I didn't bother again, but I couldn't stop replaying the moment. That inch of darkness, those eyes, watching, waiting, unflinching. They hadn't been surprised to see me. They had been expecting me. I thought maybe if I returned once, just once, I could convince myself it was over, that he was gone. So one afternoon, weeks later, I drove back to the lake house. Not alone. I wasn't that reckless. A friend followed me in their car, and I kept Bear leashed tight at my side. But as soon as I stepped out, the air changed. The driveway crunched under my shoes in a way that made me want to turn back instantly. The pines loomed higher, closer, like they had leaned inward since I'd last been there. Even in daylight, the house felt different, heavier. The owners were back by then. They cut their trip short when they heard. They met me at the door, pale but oddly unsurprised. "We forgot to mention the attic hatch," the husband said quietly, rubbing at his temple. "We thought it was sealed." The deputies had checked. They found disturbed dust around the edges, faint impressions of shoe prints if you looked close enough. I looked once. That was enough. Inside, the house smelled faintly different, sour, like sweat that had seeped into wood. The closet door had been rehung, the latch repaired, but standing near it made my skin crawl. I didn't stay long. I grabbed a few things I'd left behind: a sweater, a book, a pair of shoes by the door. My hands shook the whole time. I could feel the weight of the house pressing on me, as if the walls were remembering. Back in the car, I promised myself I was done. I wouldn't take jobs like that anymore. I'd only house-sit in neighborhoods near people with cameras and alarms and neighbors close enough to hear if I screamed. And yet, silence followed. Months passed, and I tried to bury the memory, but some nights I'd wake suddenly, convinced someone had been standing in my room. My heart would hammer until I checked every door, every closet, every corner. Sometimes I'd wake with the image of those eyes burned into the dark, so vivid, it felt like they'd been there a moment before. The worst part, he was never caught. No sightings, no reports, no arrests. He vanished like smoke dissolving into trees. Maybe he found another house. Maybe he's still out there. Sometimes late at night, I'll hear Bear's growl again in my head. Not panicked, not frantic, just steady, certain. And I know better now. Silence isn't safety. Silence is the sound of something already inside, waiting. I never trusted silence, not really. Even when I was a child, the quiet of an empty house felt like something watching, something listening, something waiting. My parents used to laugh when I insisted the silence had a shape, as though the air in my room could lean close to hear me breathe. They told me it was imagination. But even now, grown and stubborn, sitting alone in a diner buried in Montana snow, that silence still waits. Out here, where the world narrows to white roads and flickering fluorescence, I've learned to listen again, and what I hear scares me. The Ridgeway Fuel Diner wasn't much. 4 pumps, a crooked sign that rattled in the wind, and a convenience store that smelled like old grease and freezer burn. The booths inside were cracked vinyl patched with duct tape, the counter warped from decades of spilled coffee. People didn't come here for comfort. They came because they didn't have a choice. Ridgeway sat like a broken tooth in the jaw of I-90, 20 miles from the next pump in either direction, surrounded by miles of snow, dark, and nothing. That's why I took the job. After my brother's accident, the kind of accident that splits your life cleanly in two before and after, I needed somewhere nobody asked questions, somewhere quiet, where the hum of fluorescent lights could drown out the parts of me that hadn't healed. Ridgeway was good at that. Out here you could disappear, and no one would notice. My shift was overnight, the hours nobody wanted. It was just me and Brianna, the cook. She was older than me, but her face carried an odd kind of youth, like she'd never quite belonged anywhere but the greasy glow of a short-order kitchen. She didn't talk much, just worked the griddle, humming, tunelessly, every so often glancing at me with the kind of look that said she knew more than she let on. I was 23, too young to be this tired, too young to feel like I was already waiting for something bad to happen. It was early January, the kind of cold that bit through coats when the storm came down. Snow fell sideways, heavy, mean, erasing the highway, until even truckers gave up. The diner was empty, the only sounds the groan of the coffee maker and the hollow sigh of snow landing on the tin roof. I sat behind the counter with a chipped mug, the coffee inside tasting like rust and smoke. The clock over the register blinked 1:10 a.m. That was when the headlights appeared. They cut across the lot, hazy through the snow, before a red pickup rolled in slow, tires crunching on ice. The engine hummed a moment, then cut. The stillness that followed pressed against the glass like it wanted in. 2 men got out. One was tall, built heavy, buzz-cut, his shoulders squared like steel cables under his coat. The other was short and wiry, moving fast without looking rushed. They didn't get gas, didn't even touch the pumps. Just walked inside. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle. They didn't greet me. Didn't acknowledge Brianna. They just drifted the aisles, touching things without buying. The wiry one picked up a candy bar, turned it over, set it back. The tall one stood still and stared at me. Not curious, not friendly, just staring long enough for my stomach to twist. 10 minutes passed, though it felt longer. Then they left. Or at least I thought they had. I bent down behind the counter, straightening the jerky display to steady my shaking hands, when the bell jingled again. The wiry one, alone this time. His boots left wet prints across the linoleum. "Our truck's dead," he said, voice flat. "Buddy's checking the hood. Mind if I wait inside?" The snow outside was coming down so hard it looked like white sand dragging itself across the lot. My first instinct was yes. That's what you did out here, you helped. But then something in me rose up. Quiet. Insistent. A warning bell. "Sorry," I said evenly, though my throat burned. "Policy says no waiting unless you're buying something." He smiled, as if he understood, but his eyes flickered sharp for a second like teeth flashing before a bite. Then he turned, boots squeaking, and walked back into the storm. The door shut, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. That's when I heard Brianna's voice. "Hey." I turned. She stood in the kitchen doorway, pale, apron twisted in her hands. Her eyes were wide, glassy. She motioned me over. I slipped into the kitchen and pulled the door closed behind me. "I heard them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Out by the vent. They were talking about you. One of them said they'd drag the kid out back if he didn't play nice." Her words hit me like a shove. My chest hollowed, blood rushing in my ears. I didn't ask how she heard it. I didn't need to. I locked the front door from behind the counter, hit the silent alarm under the register, then followed her fast through the greasy kitchen. We slipped out the back exit into the storm. The cold slapped my face, sharp enough to sting my eyes. We ducked behind the dumpsters near the rear fence, hearts pounding, breaths burning in the air. From there, I could still see the truck. Parked by the pump, engine dead. Not a trace of snow on the hood. They hadn't even bothered to pretend it was broken down. The wiry one prowled the lot, back and forth, tapping on the glass with his knuckles like he was testing for weak spots. The tall one moved slower, steadier, a tire iron in his hand. He jammed it against the side door. The lock rattled. Brianna's fingers dug into my sleeve. "I've seen guys like this before," she whispered, her voice breaking but certain. "Not here. Fargo. My parents ran a bar. One night a man smiled like he was everybody's friend. He killed the bartender in the alley before anyone knew. Wanted to move, wanted to run, but my body locked. The storm howled around us, snow blurring everything, but the sound of metal against metal cut through like a scream. Then, headlights. Not the truck. A cruiser. Red and blue lights swept across the snow, painting the lot in broken colors. Relief surged so sudden it made me dizzy, but the two men didn't run, didn't panic. They just strolled back to their pickup, casual as Sunday morning, climbed in and rolled away. No plates, no rear lights. Just gone. By the time the cops stepped out, the truck had vanished into the white. I thought that was the end. I wanted it to be, but it wasn't. The next days blurred together. Statements, photo lineups. A detective with a salt and pepper mustache slid stills across the table. Two men, red pickup, same builds, different hoodies. Wyoming. A door kicked in, blood on the floor. A clerk who never made it home. His voice was flat when he said it. They wait for isolated spots. One distracts the other. He didn't finish. Didn't have to. Brianna didn't come back to work for a week. When she finally did, she just gave me a look. Not the kind coworkers share. Heavier. The look of survivors. After that night, I made changes. I checked the locks twice. Sometimes 3 times. Kept my phone in reach. Flashlight under the counter. Alarms tested. One night, a tourist knocked after hours, desperate for the bathroom. I didn't open. He cursed, called me paranoid through the glass. Maybe I am, or maybe I'm alive because of it. But the silence changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It bent the air, pressing closer. Sometimes at night I swore I heard voices in the vents, whispers braided with the wind. Sometimes I caught movement in the corner of my eye, shadows shifting where none should be. I told myself it was nerves, trauma. But when I closed my eyes, I saw them still, their faces, their calm retreat into the storm. And worse, I felt the silence watching. Evil doesn't always knock. Sometimes it lingers. Sometimes it waits, and sometimes it learns your name. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but I remember the dream, if it even was one. I was standing in the hallway of the house, every picture frame crooked, every door wide open. The air was thick, heavy, and the silence had weight. Then came the sound, a woman's voice, low and broken, whispering my name from inside the crawl. Space. Emma. The way it dragged the syllables made my skin crawl. I woke gasping, the sheets twisted around me like restraints. My first thought wasn't, what a nightmare. My first thought was, she's in there. The house was quiet, too quiet. I pressed my ear to the wall again. Faint, but there, scratching, like long nails tracing the inside of the wood. My pulse hammered in my throat. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it. That trauma, stress, and exhaustion were playing tricks, but then the scratching stopped, and I heard a muffled sound like breathing. Slow, deep, steady. I stayed frozen for what felt like an hour, waiting for it to stop, waiting for dawn. The next morning, Hannah noticed how pale I looked. "You're not sleeping again, huh?" she asked, pouring coffee. "There's something in the walls, Hannah, I'm serious." She gave me that "don't start this again" look. It's an old house. Wood creaks, pipes shift. You've been wound tight ever since you moved in. This isn't creaking. I heard someone breathing. Hannah's spoon clattered into the sink. She turned, annoyed. Emma, I'm not doing this. You're acting like Vivian all over again, remember? How she used to tell you there were things watching you in your room. How that messed you up. The mention of Vivian made my chest tighten. My stepmother had spent years gaslighting me, convincing me shadows in corners weren't just shadows. I hated that Hannah would compare me to her. This is different. I know what I heard, or you dreamed it, which is way more likely. I clenched my jaw, swallowed my anger. I didn't want another fight, but a cold certainty coiled in my gut. Hannah wasn't listening because Hannah didn't want to know. I stopped confiding in her after that. Instead, I started documenting. Every night, I wrote down the sounds I heard, the time they came, what they reminded me of. Scratching at 2:17, breathing at 3:09, a faint thud at 3:40. The journal filled faster than I expected. By the third week, the noises weren't just at night. They came in the daytime too when Hannah was at work. I'd be making tea and from the sealed crawl space a sound would come. A whisper, a scrape, a knock. Once I swore I heard footsteps. I pressed my hand against the wall. It was warm. That evening I invited Mark over, an old friend from college who worked in construction. If anyone could give me an explanation, it'd be him. You're saying the crawl space is sealed shut? No vents, no door? He asked, flashlight in hand. Exactly. He frowned, running the light across the wall. That's odd. You don't usually seal a space completely. Moisture buildup alone would be a nightmare. So it's not just in my head? Mark crouched, tapped the wall with his knuckles. There's a cavity back here, no doubt. Could be rats or raccoons. You'd be surprised what they sound like at night. Rats don't whisper names, Mark. He froze, studying. Me, what do you mean? I hear voices, my name. The silence stretched too long. He forced a chuckle. Then maybe you need sleep, Em? I wanted to believe him. But when he left, I noticed something strange. The spot he tapped, the exact panel he'd lingered on, had a faint smudge. Not dust, not dirt. Something oily, almost like a handprint. But the print was on the inside. Nights became unbearable. Every creak of the house, every flicker of light, I braced for her voice. One night, Hannah shook me awake. Emma, you were talking in your sleep. What did I say? You kept saying, don't let her out, don't let her out. Over and over. I stared at her, horrified. Hannah, I wasn't dreaming about the crawl space, I swear. Then what were you dreaming about? The truth stuck in my throat. I'd been dreaming of Vivian, of her standing in the hall, whispering that same name I'd been hearing, Emma. But the voice wasn't hers. The breaking point came 3 nights later. I woke to a bang so loud the bed shook. I grabbed my phone, heart racing, and turned on the flashlight. The sealed wall had a visible crack, a long, jagged split running from ceiling to floor. I stumbled back, shaking Hannah awake. It's opening. Hannah, it's opening. She sat, up groggy, furious. Jesus, Emma, what? Then she saw the crack, her face drained of color. Before she could speak, something moved inside, a pale hand, fingers too long, pressing against the split, clawing at the edges. Hannah screamed. I screamed, and then silence. The hand was gone. The crack remained. We left the house that night, didn't even grab our things. We drove until the sky turned gray with morning. Hannah said she wasn't going back. I agreed, but the house doesn't. Let go. Even now in this borrowed room I hear her, scratching, whispering, breathing my name. And sometimes I feel her fingers brushing the inside of the walls, searching for a way out. The end? I never believed the night could whisper back to me until the first time I heard it. That thought has never left me. Even now, years later, I can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, see the strange emptiness of the aisles, smell the faint, chemical tang of floor cleaner and dust. Nights at Dollar Depot and Flagstaff aren't just shifts. They're rooms you enter and never entirely leave. My name is Clara Mitchell, 24, and I was supposed to be anywhere but here. If life had gone differently, I'd be sketching in some cluttered dorm room, maybe painting signs for concerts, maybe living like I believed art had a future. But when my parents' marriage collapsed, the pieces fell onto me. Emily, my 16-year-old sister, needed food, rent, someone to keep her safe, so art died quietly, and graveyard shifts took its place. I learned quickly that the store was different after midnight. Fluorescent lights hummed like insects trapped in glass. The aisles stretched too far. Shadows reached too long. When customers came in, their footsteps echoed unnaturally, like we weren't standing on linoleum but some hollow floor over something deeper. The first time I saw him was a Thursday at 12:40 a.m. The chime above the door rang, startling me out of my haze. He shuffled in, gray hair thinning, trench coat brushing the floor, hazel eyes that didn't blink. He moved deliberately, each step measured. He picked up a can of soup and a pack of batteries. 2 items, as if he'd chosen them with purpose. Arisue. The counter. He leaned forward. His breath carried a faint metallic tang like pennies left too long in a wet hand. His voice was low, steady, too steady. There is a devil all the time. The words carved into me. I forced a chuckle too loud, saying, yeah, this place does get its fair share of weirdos. But he didn't smile. He placed exact change on the counter, tapped it twice, tap, tap, and walked out. His steps lingered even after the door shut. I thought it was nothing, just a strange man, just another odd moment. But the phrase wouldn't let me go. By Sunday, I'd convinced myself to forget him. And then the robbery happened. It was 2:15 a.m. 2 masked men stormed in, one waving a pistol. The metal caught the overhead glare, cruel and bright. Empty. The register now. My body froze, my heart seized. For a split second I saw Emily, curled up in bed, oblivious. I raised my hands, backing toward the till. Then a sound outside, sharp and jarring. A honk? A screech? I couldn't tell. The gunman panicked. The shot fired upward, shattering a ceiling tile. The sound split the store in two, violent and final. They bolted, ran past me into the lot, diving into a white panel van waiting like a predator crouched in shadow. I called 911, fingers shaking too hard to find the buttons. Later, when police showed me the footage, my stomach went cold. The driver, the calm one, waiting behind the wheel. It was him, the gray-haired man, same trench coat, same steady eyes. The whisper wasn't nonsense. It was a warning. After that, the store changed. Or maybe I did. The shadows felt thicker. The hum of the lights pushed at my skull. Sometimes I swore I heard static behind the walls. Customers came and went, but their movement seemed wrong, too precise, as if they were waiting for cues. Their eyes lingered. Too long, too patient. Then one night a young woman came in. Normal on the surface. She bought dish soap, granola bars. But when she leaned closer, her smile froze my blood. "You saw him, didn't you?" she said softly. "The man with the coat. You can tell when he's near. Static in the lights, the smell of copper. You're marked now." I couldn't breathe. "Excuse me?" But she only slid a coin across the counter. A strange coin, tarnished, worn smooth. No face, no writing, just weight. Then she left. The coin was real, cold in my palm, heavy as truth. After that, they started appearing everywhere. Sometimes in the register, slipped between normal bills. Sometimes in the break room, resting on the table as though waiting for me. Once, inside my locker, balanced, on top of my folded jacket. Always the same, small, tarnished, blank-faced markers, tokens, proof. And then the mirror. I was washing my hands in the employee bathroom, exhausted, hollow-eyed, staring at myself. When I lifted my head, my reflection blinked late. Just a beat. Then it smiled. My mouth stayed still. but the face in the mirror grinned, slow and sharp. I stumbled back, heart slamming. The reflection tilted its head, still smiling, and in its hand was one of those coins. My coin. I turned, but the bathroom was empty. When I looked again, the reflection was normal. My chest ached as if I'd run miles. The next day I smashed that mirror with the heel of my boot. But I knew. It didn't matter. The nights bled together. I started carrying pepper spray, a flashlight. I rehearsed escape routes like prayers, but deep down I understood. The danger wasn't outside anymore. It was inside the lights, the air, the glass. Inside me. And the worst part? Sometimes when I held one of those coins, I felt calmer, safer. Like it wasn't a threat at all, but an invitation. That thought scared me more than anything. I didn't tell anyone at work about the coin. That was the first rule I made for myself. It felt like a pact. Like the moment I let someone else see it or hear about it, it would tether me to him even tighter. Still, it stayed heavy in my pocket during every shift, as if it carried its own pulse. I could feel it vibrate sometimes, faintly, like a heartbeat. The week that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Every shift I worked nights, he came in. Always the same slow walk, always the same order, always the same static hiss in my ears. And always when he left, I'd find another coin. Different places, by the register, on the mop handle, tucked into the freezer door, but always within my reach. I had 6 by the end of that week. I kept them in a little glass jar on my dresser, though I hated looking at them. Something about their texture unsettled me. Smooth at first touch, then strangely porous if I held them too long, as if the surface itself shifted. I wasn't the only one who noticed him now. One night, just after 2:30 a.m., a man in a denim jacket came in to grab a coffee. He was grizzled, his hands blackened from work, probably a trucker or mechanic. He set his cup down, fished for change, and then glanced at the door where the man had just stepped out. "You see him a lot, don't you?" the man asked. His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. I froze. "What do you mean?" "That guy. The one that never blinks. You see him?" I didn't want to answer, but the stranger leaned closer, lowering his voice. "He doesn't talk to everyone. If he talks to you, it's already too late." The words clawed through me. Too late for what? The man just shook his head, dropped a few crumpled bills, and left without his change. I watched his truck lights fade into the dark road outside, my pulse hammering so hard I thought I might faint. It was confirmation, horrible confirmation. This wasn't just me unraveling. Someone else saw him too. Someone else understood. That night I went home and stared into my bathroom mirror for hours. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe signs of my own madness, maybe proof that I still existed as myself. But at 4:17 a.m., when exhaustion blurred my vision, it happened. My reflection smiled. It wasn't my smile. My lips stayed still, trembling while the girl in the mirror tilted her head, curling her mouth into a grin I'd never made in my life. Her eyes glittered with malice, a light that wasn't mine. I stumbled back, knocking my toothbrush into the sink. "No," I whispered. But she didn't stop. The reflection leaned closer, pressing her palms against the glass, and mouthed words I couldn't hear. I knew she was saying my name. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Glass rained into the sink, cutting my knuckles. The reflection was gone, but not forgotten. I wrapped my hand in a towel, crying into the fabric, the sound muffled and small in the empty apartment. For the first time, I thought about quitting the job, moving away, anything to break free. But the next night, I was back. The fluorescent hum, the sticky linoleum, the cooler's cold breath. All of it waited for me. And he came again. This time, he set a coin down directly in front of me, not hidden, not slipped into some secret corner. He placed it on the counter and tapped it once with his finger, his eyes holding mine. A deliberate gesture, a marking. When he left, I didn't pick it up. I wanted to throw it away, to shove it down the drain, to burn it. But my hand betrayed me. By the time I realized, it was already in my pocket, and the whispering grew louder, not just in the store anymore. I heard it on the walk home, in the creak of the stairs, in the faint buzz of my phone charger. A voice calling my name, stretching it, savoring it. Sometimes it was behind me, sometimes above, sometimes curling right into my ear. I tried blasting music, sleeping with the TV on, showering until the water turned cold. Nothing drowned it out. One night, after another shift that left me trembling, I locked my apartment door and leaned against it, whispering, "What do you want from me?" The whisper answered, soft, steady, terrifyingly gentle. To listen. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, staring out at the parking lot where the sodium lights buzzed. The coins sat in their jar, faintly rattling though no one touched them. I thought of the trucker's warning. If he talks to you, it's already too late. Too late for what? To resist? To escape? To stay myself? By the end of that week, I knew the truth. It didn't matter if I quit the job, if I smashed every mirror in my house, if I buried the coins in concrete. He had already marked me, and worse, I was beginning to want it. The whisper was no longer foreign. It was familiar, comforting, like a secret lullaby only I could hear. I started craving it during the day when sunlight drowned it out. I found myself checking my pockets, hoping for another coin. Last night I stood at the register long after closing, the store empty, the lights buzzing, and I whispered back, "Just a word, just a test." Yes. The static surged like a storm through the speakers, and in that moment I swore I heard him laugh. Not cruelly, not kindly, just knowingly. Now the nights are different. I don't dread the sound anymore. I wait for it. I wait for his slow footsteps, for the hiss of the fluorescent lights, for the cool weight of the coin against my palm. I don't ask myself anymore whether this is a warning or a recruitment. I already know, because last night when I locked the door after closing, I caught my reflection again. This time she didn't smile. She just whispered the same thing he always does. Only now I understood. Listen. And I did. And the worst part, the part that makes my stomach drop even as my lips curl into that same smile, is this. I found myself listening for his whisper, because the night, after all, had finally learned my name. I never liked silence, not since my father disappeared. People talk about quiet as if it's peace, as if it means safety. But I know better. Silence has weight. It presses against you. It lets things in. The last time anyone saw him alive, he was walking out of this very building, the Fairview Public Library, just past midnight, snow falling so hard it swallowed his outline. He never made it home. I keep one of his things with me every night shift. A tattered leather bookmark, cracked along the edges where his fingers wore it down. It still smells faintly like the pipe tobacco he swore he'd given up. He left it in a book once, years before, and I teased him for dog-earing pages. After he vanished, Mom gave it to me as though it were proof he'd been real. Proof that someone so large in my life could leave behind something small enough to lose between the pages. That's why I took this job. Everyone thought it was just about money, grad school debt, and rent piling up. But the truth was heavier, stranger. Some part of me believed if I stayed in the library long enough, if I listened hard enough, I might find an answer. I might hear something no one else had. The December wind rattled the tall glass panes as I slid my ID across the night security guard's desk. He didn't bother looking up, just muttered, "Midnight in the tomb again, Rachel?" I forced a laugh. Someone's got to keep the ghosts company. He grunted, not amused, and went back to scrolling his phone. Inside, the air always felt a little too still, like the heating system pushed out warmth but drained oxygen. The lights hummed overhead in long rows. Beyond the first aisle, darkness, hung between the shelves like drapes. The routine was supposed to be simple. Reshelve the carts of books, check the public computer lab once an hour, walk the floor, then lock up at dawn. They told me when I was hired, nothing happens at night. But I'd learned that wasn't true because things did happen. Small things, almost nothing, until they weren't. That night started like any other. I shelved a stack of biographies, wiped crumbs off the computer keyboards left by some teenagers earlier, and circled back to the circulation desk with my thermos of coffee. My phone buzzed. For once, I had a single bar of service, a text from my mom. "You working late again? Try to get some rest, don't be like him." I didn't answer. I never knew what to say when she brought him up. Around 1:30 a.m., the building sighed. At least that's how it sounded. A low creak rolled through the beams, followed by another, closer. Not random, not like settling wood, like footsteps. I froze, gripping the desk edge. The pattern was too deliberate. Step, step, pause. Step, step, pause. And then I heard it. Not just creaking wood this time, but a faint metallic clicking. Irregular, but insistent, like someone tapping a coin against a pipe. It came from the direction of the history section. "Library's closed," I called out, voice sharp against the hush. "If you're still here, you need to head out." No reply. Just the soft echo of the clicking. My heart thudded in my chest, but I forced myself to move. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and made my way through the aisles, the beam cutting across spines of books that seemed to lean closer the longer I stared at them. The noise had shifted. Not footsteps anymore, but paper rustling, faint, as if someone turned pages with deliberate care. The history section. Always the history section. I reached the end of the row, shone the light across empty space, and saw nothing, except, on the computer monitor at the far side of the room, a screen flickered to life. I hadn't touched it. No one had. The lab was supposed to be on standby, blank screens waiting for patrons. But this one glowed with a distorted haze of pixels, flickering static that formed and unformed letters too quickly for me to read. I took a step closer, heart hammering. For a moment, I swore I saw Carter flash across the screen. Letters stretched tall and warped, half disappearing before they fully appeared. Then came the shape of a face, or the suggestion of one. Features, smearing across the monitor like wet paint. I stumbled backward, muttering, "Jesus Christ." The screen went black. Every other monitor in the lab flicked on at once. Rows of glowing squares lit up the room, humming faintly, each showing nothing but the library's login page. But for that split second before they stabilized, I'd seen it again. His name. My father's. I stood frozen, flashlight trembling, in my hand throat tight with the need to call someone, anyone. But my phone screen glared back. No service. I shut down every monitor one by one, hands shaking, but when I turned, I noticed something on the desk behind me. My breath caught. It was a bookmark. His bookmark. The same one I carried in my coat pocket every night, only I hadn't taken it out tonight. I knew because I'd checked it earlier, running my thumb over the worn leather for comfort. I dug into my pocket with trembling fingers, and it was still there. 2 bookmarks. Identical. Same creases, same worn edge, same faint smell of pipe smoke. My knees went weak. I sank into the desk chair, the bookmark cold against my skin. Somewhere down the hall, the metallic clicking started again. Closer this time. The clicking echoed again, faint but steady, bouncing between the shelves as though the sound itself couldn't decide where it lived. I clutched both bookmarks, one in each hand, and felt sick to my stomach. There was no rational explanation. I knew it. I'd kept mine in my pocket all night. Yet here was another, impossibly identical, resting on the desk like someone had set it down for me to find. I whispered to the empty air, "Dad?" My voice cracked in the middle, the word too fragile. The only answer was silence. Heavy silence, the kind that waits. I stuffed both bookmarks into my coat pocket and forced myself to stand. though my legs felt like they might give way. The metallic clicking had stopped, but that made it worse. The quiet pressed harder, like the whole building was holding its breath. I told myself I'd just do one more round, check the aisles, lock the lab, and call it a night. Forget protocol. No one would know if I left early. But as I stepped into the aisle, I caught movement in the glass. The tall windows facing the street reflected the rows of books like endless tunnels of shelves. But between those reflections, I saw something else. A face. My father's face. Or what used to be his. He was distorted, like the glass bent his features wrong. His eyes were sunken, skin grayish, lips pulled too tight over his teeth. His head tilted, as if he were trying to see me more clearly. I spun, expecting him to be behind me, but the aisle was empty. When I looked back at the glass, the reflection lingered a moment longer before dissolving into nothing but my own pale, horrified expression. I pressed my hands against the glass. They were shaking so badly I could see the tremor in the reflection. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, not caring if anyone heard. That's when the clicking resumed, right behind me. Slow, deliberate. Click, pause, click. I turned, flashlight, beam cutting through the dark. And there he was. Not my father. Not exactly. The silhouette stood at the far end of the history aisle. Too tall, too still, face shrouded in shadow. His body didn't move except for the faint tilt of his head, but the sound, metal against metal, continued, as though it emanated from him. I raised my voice, though my throat felt strangled. "How do you know my name? How do you know him?" The shadow answered with a voice like gravel dragged across a floor. "Your father was not careful enough." The flashlight nearly slipped from my hand. I staggered back, words tumbling out, before I could think. "What did you do to him?" The figure stepped forward, not walking, but sliding as if the air itself carried him closer. His outline seemed to waver, edges flickering like bad film. "He was just like you," the voice rasped. "He didn't listen either." Something inside me broke. Panic flooded through my chest and I bolted. My shoes slapped against the tile as I tore down the aisles, the flashlight beam jittering wildly across books that seemed to lean after me. I ducked into the archive room, slammed the door, and pressed my back against it. The knob rattled violently, twisting under a pressure I didn't want to imagine. "Stop it," I shouted, tears burning my eyes. "Leave me alone." The rattling ceased. I waited, panting, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then, tap, 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 that metallic clicking, now on the other side of the archive, impossibly distant and close at once. I stumbled deeper inside, down the narrow stairwell, into the basement. The air grew colder with each step, dampness clinging to the walls. My flashlight illuminated rows of storage boxes stacked like coffins, each labeled with decades-old circulation records. And then I saw it. On the floor near the far wall lay another object, small, familiar. I approached slowly, dread tightening, every nerve. It was his lighter. My father's old brass Zippo engraved with the initials JC. He'd carried it everywhere, flicking it open and closed even after he quit smoking, an absent habit. I'd heard that sound all my life, click, flick, click. I picked it up. Cold metal burned against my skin. The clicking stopped. I don't remember deciding to do it, but I flicked the lighter open. A weak flame shivered to life, painting the walls in trembling orange. In the flicker, I saw movement. A shadow, too large, too wrong, sliding along the wall, bending where it shouldn't, stretching toward me. The flame sputtered and died. Darkness swallowed me whole. I screamed. My own voice sounded too small against the black. Somewhere in it. The rasp returned, close enough I could feel the air shift with each word. "He tried to warn you." I stumbled backward, hitting the cold wall, clutching the lighter so hard the edges bit into my palm. "Warn me of what?" I cried. But the answer came as only a sound. The paper rustling faint and steady, like hundreds of pages turning all at once, though no one touched them. I bolted for the emergency exit, shoving the door open with my shoulder. The blast of cold air nearly knocked me off my feet. But I kept running barefoot into the snow, the lighter clenched in my fist. The night was empty, silent. Only my footprints marked the ground. But I swear I heard one more faint click behind me as I collapsed into the snow. I always thought the night would protect me. That was my private creed, whispered into my own mind every time I locked my door, drew the curtains, and let the hush of the dark press against the walls. I told myself that as long as the world outside was asleep, I could breathe, I could think, I could exist without the noise of other people bleeding into me. The day belonged to jobs, traffic, strangers staring too long. The night was mine. At least that's what I believed. The first sign that something was wrong was so small, so ordinary, that I nearly convinced myself I'd imagined it. A lamp was moved. I'd left it angled toward the wall, casting a muted glow when I read in bed. But when I woke that morning, the shade faced the window, spilling light into the street. I froze, staring at it, my toothbrush halfway to my mouth. My heart gave a single hard thump, then settled into a nervous flutter. Maybe I'd bumped it, maybe I'd just forgotten. That was the explanation I clung to because the alternative was unbearable. Still, I felt a pressure behind my ribs all day. I turned the thought over like a loose tooth, worried it, tried to convince myself it was nothing. But that night when I got home from work, I noticed the curtains weren't pulled the way I left them. Not wide open, just enough of a gap that someone could see inside. And on the table beside my keys was a coffee mug I hadn't used in weeks. "Stop it," I whispered to myself. "You're just tired." But when I tried to sleep, the air felt different in my room, heavy, stirred by someone else's breath. I wish I could say I leapt into action, that I called the police or a friend, but the truth is uglier. I did nothing. I told myself it was my own absent-mindedness. I told myself if I ignored it, it would go away. That's how you survive when something impossible edges into your life. You rationalize until the edges smooth out enough to look ordinary. Days passed. Then came the next detail. The digital clock on my nightstand blinked 3:17 a.m. when I woke, and I swore the numbers looked sharper, brighter, as if someone had fiddled with the settings. Later, when I scrolled through my phone, I found photos I didn't take. They weren't landscapes or random shots. They were of me, sleeping, cooking, sitting cross-legged on the floor with my laptop. My throat went dry as sand. I scrolled with a shaking finger, the blood pounding in my ears. The timestamps lined up with times I was alone, completely alone. Remember whispering, "Someone's in here." The words tasted metallic, like chewing on a penny. I couldn't breathe right after that. I taped over my webcam. I set chairs against doors. I lay awake, heart hammering at every creak. And yet the next morning the tape was peeled back from the lens, smooth without a tear. The night stopped being protection. It became an enemy. I started talking to people less because every conversation felt tainted. I imagined the invisible audience. Who was watching? A neighbor? Someone online? The delivery guy who smiled too wide? My coworker who always lingered by my desk? The paranoia grew roots in me and I carried it everywhere. One night my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Nice curtains." I dropped the phone like it burned me. My knees almost gave out. Hands trembling, I picked it up again, hoping I'd misread, but the words were there, clear, undeniable. My curtains, the ones I'd obsessed over, the ones I'd caught open when I swore I'd close them. I didn't reply. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't. If I answered, it meant I accepted this presence. Instead, I powered the phone off and threw it into the drawer like I could bury the threat, but ignoring didn't work. It never did. The next message came 2 nights later. "Why do you stay up so late?" That was when I stopped sleeping altogether. I prowled my apartment like a guard dog, checking locks, pulling curtains tight, pressing my ear against the door. Every shadow stretched too long. Every hum of the refrigerator felt like static in my brain. I bought extra locks, cameras, motion lights. I thought of calling the police, but what would I say? That a lamp had been moved? That a text scared me? They'd pat me on the head, take a report, and leave. And when they left, I'd still be here alone. Weeks blurred. My body turned hollow from exhaustion. At work, I made mistakes. Friends texted, and I left them on read. I couldn't explain without sounding insane. I started dreading daylight too, because if someone could slip in at night, they could just as easily do it when I was gone. Then came the worst discovery. I was scrolling through my laptop trying to distract myself when a folder I'd never seen appeared on the desktop. The name was simple: US. My finger hovered, trembling, before I clicked. Inside were hundreds of videos. Me brushing my teeth, me dressing, me lying curled on the couch, all filmed from different angles, some from high corners, some from low, some impossibly close. The camera lingered on my face as I slept, catching every twitch, every sigh. I slammed the laptop shut, bile rising in my throat. My hands shook so violently I could barely breathe. I staggered to the bathroom and vomited until my ribs hurt. That was the night I left. I stuffed clothes into a bag, grabbed my laptop, and fled to a motel 2 towns over. The room smelled of bleach and cigarette smoke, but the anonymity felt like oxygen. I curled on the stiff bed, phone clutched in my hand, convinced I'd escaped. For a few days, I believed it. Then, one morning, I woke to find the motel curtains pulled open. Just a crack, enough for someone to see me. And on the bedside table, my phone buzzed. You can't hide. My scream tore the air. I threw the phone against the wall, the plastic cracking. My heart thundered, my skin slick with sweat. I realized then, this wasn't about a place. It wasn't about my apartment or the motel. It was about me. Wherever I went, they followed. That's when the unraveling truly began. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. My world shrank to the size of my fear. Even when I moved again, even when I tried therapy, even when I bought a new phone, the dread clung to me. At night, I swore I heard footsteps outside the window. During the day, I saw reflections in store glass, convinced someone was behind. Me, I fortified my home with locks, bars, alarms, but nothing touched the core of it. The certainty that I was being watched. That every laugh, every sigh, every whispered thought was cataloged somewhere. And the worst part? The silence. Whoever it was didn't need to touch me, didn't need to hurt me. They just needed to remind me now and then with a text or a misplaced object that they were there, that my life wasn't mine. Months later, I'm still living like this. My house is a bunker. My phone stays in a drawer. I barely step outside. Friends gave up on me. Work slipped away. My therapist calls it hypervigilance, but that word is too clinical, too soft. I call it being hunted. Sometimes in the deepest part of the night, when the walls hum with quiet, I whisper to myself, the night will protect me. But the words sound hollow now, a lie I can't swallow, because the truth is, there's no protection. Not in the night, not in the day, not behind locks or passwords or curtains. Privacy is just an illusion, and I was a fool to believe in it. And the question that gnaws at me, that keeps me awake even when exhaustion claws at my eyes, is this: if they've seen everything, every private moment I thought was mine, then what's left of me that's truly mine at all? I always believed the night was safer for me. Maybe it was the way the roads felt hollow after midnight, like the whole world had pulled a blanket over itself and left me alone in the quiet. Maybe it was because I thought I could hide in that. Quiet too. 19 years old, broke, bouncing from one sketchy roommate situation to another, trying to outrun the kind of men who all blurred together under the name Kyle. I told myself night shifts would protect me. Uber Eats was just a stopgap gig, temporary until I could start community college in the fall. A summer hustle, a way to keep the lights on. And yet, even then, some part of me must have known that the dark isn't what shields you, it's what waits for you. At first it was simple. Late night runs meant fewer eyes, less traffic, no customers trying to chat through half-open doors, just me, a full tank, and my playlists rattling the speakers of my old Corolla. I had this routine: pull through gas, stations lit like tired sentinels, past the motels where curtains never closed, drive past trailers strung with weak porch lights that buzzed with moths. I thought the strangest thing I'd seen was a guy who tipped me in loose bullets and pocket lint. I told myself, it's Arkansas, it's just Arkansas. But I was wrong. The real strangeness waited on the edges of Helena, where the maps blur into places they shouldn't. That night was late July. The air hung heavy, the kind of humidity that sticks to your throat and makes you swallow more than you need to. I just dropped Taco Bell to a nurse pulling a double shift, and I was coasting through back roads when the next ping lit my screen. McDonald's, big order, 5 items, high tip, customer name Mrs. Walker, 87. No message, no apartment notes, just that. It looked easy. 12 minutes off the highway. Easy money. I told myself, don't overthink it. I swung through the drive-thru, picked up the order: 2 quarter-pounders, fries, a McFlurry, and apple pie. The bag felt hot and greasy against my leg as I set it on the seat. I let the GPS guide me. City lights fell away fast. Street lamps gave way to gravel, and the road narrowed between trees that leaned inward like they'd been waiting. At first, I thought the silence was peaceful, but after a while it pressed on my chest until I could hear only my heartbeat, too loud, too insistent. 5 minutes in, my bars started dropping. 3, 2, then gone. The GPS kept pointing me forward, the blue dot pulsing like a heartbeat on the frozen screen. The road tightened. No houses, no mailboxes, nothing but trees. And then I saw it. A light ahead, not a porch light, not a flood lamp, just a single bulb dangling from a frayed cord strung over a low branch. The kind of bulb you'd expect in a basement, not a forest. It flickered, struggling like it couldn't decide if it was alive or dying. Beneath it, a fence. Rust-eaten, strangled by weeds, the kind of barrier that wasn't keeping anyone out anymore. My phone chirped once before freezing. You've arrived. But there was no house, no porch, no driveway, just that swaying bulb. I killed the music without realizing it. The silence inside the car somehow louder than the trees outside. I gripped the wheel, telling myself to wait for a reroute, but the map just blinked at me, like it was mocking me. Nope. No way, I whispered to no one, trying to laugh under my breath. Maybe the pin was off. Maybe it was a mile down. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Outside. Close. Ragged. Uneven. 2 sets. One deep, the other whistling faintly through teeth. Then came the crunch. Leaves shifting, twigs breaking under deliberate weight. I froze, hand slick on the gear shift. Every instinct screamed at me not to look, but silence has a way of forcing your eyes open. I turned, just enough. Nothing in the headlights but pale trunks. Nothing yet. Just leave the damn food, I whispered to myself, voice trembling. I shoved the bag out the passenger door. It landed with a dull thud against gravel, like some ridiculous offering. Then, snap. A stick breaking sharp, too close. That was it. I slammed the car into reverse. Tires spun, gravel spit against the undercarriage. For a second I thought I was stuck, that they'd open the door and drag me out. But the wheels caught, jerking the car backward. I swerved, fishtailed, fought the wheel until I hit the bend and tore down the path toward the highway. I don't know how I kept control. My hands shook so violently I thought I'd snap the wheel in half, but I kept looking in the rear view. And then I saw him. A figure stepped out from the trees, tall, hunched in a hoodie, something long and metallic glinting in his hand. He didn't run, didn't yell, just stood half in shadow watching. I drove like hell until the neon glow of a BP sign cracked open the dark. 10 miles gone in blind panic, and those lights burned like salvation. I pulled in crooked, staggered, inside breath ragged, body trembling so hard I nearly knocked over a rack of chips. The clerk, wiry, silver beard, Miller High Life cap stained with sweat, looked up. Not startled, just squinted, like he'd seen this before. "Let me guess," he said, tapping the counter. You went out to the Walker place. My chest seized. What? He leaned back, calm as hell. You're not the first. Some kid came in barefoot once, said he lost his shoes running. My words tumbled out, broken, too fast. There wasn't a house, just a light, a clearing. Someone was out there, I swear. He nodded, slow. Like I'd just confirmed something. That's how it always is. Nobody's lived out there in years. Land's been in foreclosure since 2014. Nearest property's a half-mile past the tree line. I swallowed hard, palms still sweating. But there was an order. The name, Mrs. Walker. I heard them breathing. I saw he had something in his hand. The clerk's eyes didn't flinch. Some say it's a trap. Been weird reports. Missing pets, break-ins. Cops get called, but nobody gets caught. Whoever's out there, they're slippery. Vanish before anyone can prove a damn thing. My voice cracked. Has anyone been hurt? He hesitated. A pause, small but heavy. Then, not yet, far as we know. The words dropped like lead in my gut. I didn't push. I left, shaky, fumbling for my phone. I called support from the parking lot. Tried to sound calm, but my voice betrayed me. I told them everything. The order, the address, the figure. The rep pulled up my log. Paused. Then, I'm sorry, but there's no trip under that name. Nothing by Mrs. Walker. Nothing even canceled. There's no record. My stomach bottomed out. I sat there until morning, too scared to drive home, too scared to face the dark of my own apartment. I replayed it over and over. The clearing, the breathing, the bulb swaying though the air was still. Days later, I checked again. Still nothing. I emailed support. The reply was generic. We're sorry we couldn't locate the trip associated with that name or address, like I'd dreamed it. But you don't dream two sets of lungs exhaling outside your car. You don't dream the crunch of boots on twigs. You don't dream the metallic gleam in the hand of a man who doesn't need to chase because he knows you'll hesitate. I told a buddy later. Expected him to laugh. He didn't. Just said, some of those roads out there, you don't want to know who walks them after midnight. That was enough. I quit night shifts, stopped taking rural orders altogether. But sometimes late when I pass those back roads, I think about the what-ifs. What if I'd stepped out? What if I'd gone deeper? Thought the GPS was just off. What if I'd waited 5 minutes longer? It's been a year. I've got steady work now. Bad coffee, humming fluorescent lights. Safe, predictable. But I looked it up later. The rusted fence was real. Walker property. Last Mrs. Walker died in 2016. No relatives. The name on my app wasn't random, it was bait. They didn't want food, they wanted me. Young, alone, off the grid. They wanted hesitation, and I almost gave it to them. Now, whenever I see another delivery driver idling on a back road, I feel the weight in my chest. I want to scream, trust your gut. Leave if it feels wrong. Don't check twice, don't wait. Because sometimes the danger isn't what you see, it's what waits just out of sight. Planning for the moment you doubt yourself, and they count on it. No tip is worth disappearing for. I never expected that the sound of folding clothes could feel like a heartbeat outside my chest, but that's how it was on nights when Crestline's aisles belonged to me. The air was so still that every motion seemed amplified. The snap of denim as I folded, the whisper of hangers sliding along metal rods, the faint chemical clean scent of freshly unpacked blouses rising into the hum of fluorescent lights. Nights blurred into ritual, 8 hours of bending, straightening, smoothing. The kind of quiet work that kept my hands busy while my mind wandered, except on nights when the silence pressed too close, too heavy, like the store itself was holding its breath. My name is Vanessa Reed, 26, an unfinished degree hanging like a ghost over me. The dream of becoming an art teacher filed away with all the other things I thought would define me. Instead, I measure nights by racks of polyester, shoes lined heel to toe, receipts curling from printers still warm. I thought I could live with it. Nights were manageable, even peaceful, when I convinced myself I was alone. That night, in the Yarisdar, middle of a brittle Iowa January, even the break room felt like a refrigerator. I cupped my coffee, but the ceramic only stole warmth from my hands instead of giving any back. My reflection in the vending machine glass looked pale, tired, like someone rehearsing survival more than living. I had just reorganized the women's section, fabrics in neat color-coded gradients, a painter arranging pigment on a palette, when the doors groaned open at 1:30 a.m. A man entered, tall with a baseball cap pulled low, a thick coat zipped up to his throat. The kind of man you'd overlook at noon but notice too much at night. His steps were measured, too measured. He didn't look at the racks. He looked at the space around him as though cataloging it. I gave him the line I gave every late night. Customer, need help finding something? His smile spread slowly, stretching wider than necessary, teeth catching the fluorescent glare. His eyes stayed fixed on me. No, he said, voice smooth as paper tearing. Just looking. But I think I found something interesting. His gaze made clear what that something was. I forced a small nod, throat tight. The air in the aisle felt colder, as though the automatic doors had let in something other than winter. I drifted toward the kids' section, but minutes later, I caught him behind me again. Do you live nearby? He asked, words hanging between casual and predatory. My hands tightened around a hanger until the plastic bit into my palm. I work nights. Store policy says I can't discuss personal stuff with customers. He tilted his head. His smile didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. You're careful, I like that. The way he said it wasn't praise. It was a test, as though he was gauging how far I'd go to keep him at bay. My skin prickled. I hurried into the stockroom, where Leah was bent over a box cutter in hand. My whisper tumbled out too fast. There's a guy out there. Keeps following me. Won't stop smiling. Leah's eyes narrowed. She leaned toward the crack of the door, peeking out. Her shoulders stiffened. That guy? He's been circling electronics for almost an hour before you saw him. Creepy as hell. We told the manager, who promised to keep an eye on the cameras. His voice was calm, almost bored. Relief flickered through me, but it was weak, like a flashlight's dying battery. When I stepped back out, he was waiting, not browsing, waiting. His back against the changing room wall, his smile growing as I approached. You shouldn't ignore me, he murmured. I could walk you home. The words crawled into me like insects. My hand twitched toward the radio, clipped at my hip. I pretended to call for assistance, hoping my act was convincing. After a long, taut silence, he finally moved toward the exit. But he didn't leave. From the register, I watched him linger in the parking lot, directly under a flickering overhead light. The air outside carried a pale frost, his breath visible in the dark. He stood there with his hands buried in his coat pockets, unmoving except for the shifting light that made him blur in and out of shadow. That's when I noticed it. He had left something on the counter, a folded receipt, small and pale against the laminate. At first I thought he'd dropped it, but when I picked it up, my fingers stilled. Unfolded, it revealed a hand-drawn sketch, quick, sharp pencil lines of a woman standing behind a counter. My counter. The details were crude but recognizable. The hanging racks, the register, and a rough approximation of me. Eyes too large, smile too thin. Beneath it, in letters pressed hard enough to dent the paper, be careful. The paper trembled in my hands. My breath hitched, shallow. My pulse pounded in my throat so loud it drowned the hum of the lights. My knees threatened to buckle, but I forced myself upright, folding the receipt back down until the creases threatened to tear. I shoved it deep into my pocket. Police came 15 minutes later. By then, he was gone. Matches reports we've had from other stores, one of the officers said. Guy doesn't buy anything, just hangs around, talks to employees, sometimes, leaves notes. Nothing illegal. Probably just a lonely creep. Lonely creep. As though loneliness explained the drawing now burning a hole in my pocket. After that night, every part of me changed. I left only in groups, clutching my keys like claws. My breath clouded the air outside, every plume breaking apart in frantic bursts. My eyes darted across the lot, searching shadows for movement. My body knew before my mind admitted it. I was prey now, sleep fractured. Every creak in my apartment walls sounded like footsteps. Every car door shutting outside jarred me awake. More than once I thought I saw him. Just beyond the lot, a figure under the broken streetlight, cap low, smile fixed. When I blinked, he was gone. I told myself the drawing was proof. Not of him, but of me. Proof that my instincts had been right. Proof that I wasn't paranoid. I folded it so many times the paper softened, the lines blurring. But I couldn't throw it away. I carried it with me, a warning written in graphite. I took a self-defense class, learned how to break holds, how to use my elbows and knees, learned to scream, not freeze. My muscles learned, but my mind never fully believed. My hand still trembled when I touched the register drawer, still remembered the coldness of it against my palms that night. I told new employees what managers wouldn't. Trust your gut. Don't let politeness override safety. Notice who watches, you, who lingers. Watch their hands more than their words. I told them danger doesn't always shout. It sometimes whispers, sometimes smiles, sometimes leaves a drawing folded like a gift. Years passed. I don't work nights anymore, but the vigilance stayed. Every store I walk into after dark, I scan for exits before I look at products. Every stranger's smile I weigh too heavily. But I also began painting again. Not for a classroom, but for myself. My canvases are filled with shadowed figures at the edge of light, flickering silhouettes under broken bulbs. I paint women holding receipts folded into sharp little squares, paper cutting into their skin. My brush trembles sometimes, but I keep painting, because art was always supposed to be about seeing, teaching others to notice. Now my art is my noticing, my vigilance given form. The fear didn't kill the dream, it changed it. Sometimes late, at night I imagine him still out there circling aisles, leaving his folded receipts. Maybe he waits for someone to stop being careful. Maybe he's waiting for me. And maybe that's why I paint, because if he ever comes back, I want to be ready. I want him to see that he didn't break me. He only made me sharper, more exact, more careful than even he imagined. The scariest, dangers aren't always loud. Sometimes they leave messages in pencil. Sometimes they look like men with smiles too wide. Sometimes they wait. And sometimes they make you into an artist you never planned on becoming. I always hated the quiet that comes after visiting hours. The way the fluorescent lights flicker as if testing your resolve. The antiseptic clinging to everything like a suffocating perfume. The echo of a distant monitor beep that seems just a little too deliberate. That's how St. Mary's Medical Center felt at 12:03 a.m. on a rainy August night. The kind of night that smells like wet asphalt and loneliness combined. The rain drumming against the windows in rhythm with a heartbeat. You're not sure is yours. My name is Angela Torres. I'm 32, a night nurse, and I've been walking these hallways for almost a decade, quietly collecting memories I'd rather forget. 2 years ago, I lost my brother Ethan, right here on the 6th floor. I wasn't on shift that night. I wasn't there. And yet sometimes the hospital doesn't let me forget. The shift started like every other. Coffee that burned my tongue, charts stacked neatly like excuses, the quiet hum of life support machines humming. With indifferent patients, but tonight felt off. The way water feels heavier before a storm, like the air itself is waiting for something. I tried to shake it off, telling myself the rhythm of the night would soothe me. It didn't. I walked past room 607, where an elderly man slept, monitor beeping in shallow monotony. The hallway lights flickered once and then steadied. I cursed under my breath, adjusting my stethoscope. It was nothing, I told myself, just the old wiring again. But then I saw it. Room 608, its call light blinking softly, unnervingly. I remembered it had been emptied weeks ago, stripped down for renovations. The light wasn't supposed to be on. Not possible. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but the red glow pulsed insistently, demanding I notice it. I paused in the hallway, the carpet damp under my shoes from the occasional leaks near the windows, and a shiver ran up my spine. Probably a wiring issue, I whispered aloud, not expecting an answer. My voice sounded wrong in the stillness, too loud, too human. I could feel the hospital pressing in around me, the walls closer than they should be. I stepped inside. The air hit me like ice water, cold, sharp, tasting of rust and old fear. My heartbeat thumped like a jackhammer in my chest. The bed was made perfectly, crisp sheets tucked in, pillow fluffed. And yet, beneath the sheet, there was something. A shallow rise and fall of the blanket, a breath. I froze. "Sir?" I said, my voice smaller now. "You're not supposed to be here." The figure under the sheet moved. Slowly, painfully, the sheet shifted. And then I saw him. Ethan. Or someone wearing his face. Pale, bruised, eyes wide and terrified. He was real, impossibly real, and yet wrong. My knees buckled. I wanted to scream, but my voice refused. "Angela." His whisper was a rasp, a sound that scraped against the edges of memory and sanity. "You left me. Don't leave me again." I stumbled back, fumbling for the intercom. My fingers trembled against the buttons. "Security? Room 608. Please, someone." But the static answered first, then his voice again, closer this time, harsher. "You left me. Again." I ran. The hallway stretched, impossibly long. Lights overhead began, popping one by one, casting sections of the corridor into darkness before flaring back to life, then out again. A metallic crash behind me, carts slamming into walls, drawers rattling, but no one was there. No one ever was. I reached the stairwell and nearly tripped over my own feet as the pounding of footsteps echoed above me. Too fast, too deliberate. Following, watching. My lungs burned, the acrid tang of fear mixing with the antiseptic on my hands. I forced myself forward, my sneakers squeaking against wet linoleum, the stairwell smelling of damp concrete and mildew. At the bottom, the exit doors loomed like salvation. I pushed them open, and rain immediately soaked my hair, slicking it too, my face cold and shocking. Thunder rolled across the sky, a sound that seemed to answer the pounding in my chest. My breath came in ragged gasps. For a moment I thought it was over, but it wasn't. I glanced back at the building. The 6th floor windows glowed faintly in the storm, lights flickering with a rhythm that almost felt like a heartbeat. Room 608. The red call light was still on. I hadn't imagined it, no matter what the tape said. Later, after the hospital, reviewed the security footage, they showed me running, screaming through empty hallways, through empty rooms. No one else appeared. No carts, no shadows, no footsteps, just me, frantic and unhinged. And yet, the call light. That red glow didn't lie. The wires had been cut months ago. I transferred to another hospital after that night, telling myself distance would heal the guilt. But some habits die slower than trauma. Now every time I enter a patient's room at night, I hesitate. My hands shake as I reach for the sheets, my breath catching in my throat. I imagine that moment, every time, pulling back the blanket and seeing him there again, Ethan's wide, frightened eyes staring up at me, and that voice rasping and accusing. "You left me. Don't leave me again." And sometimes, when the hallways are empty, when the monitors hum and the fluorescent lights flicker, I swear I can feel him just behind me breathing. It isn't just grief anymore. I know that. There's something in St. Mary's that lingers, something patient, something that feeds on guilt, that waits in the spaces between light and shadow. The hospital doesn't want me. It wants him. Or maybe it wants me to join him. Can still smell the ice-cold air of room 608 on my skin, the scent of wet concrete and antiseptic, the faint metallic tang of fear that clings to the sheets. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the rasping whisper in the static. "You left me. Don't leave me again." Sometimes I think about going back, just once, just to see if it's real. But I don't. Because if it is real, I don't know if I'd ever leave. And some nights in the quiet, I swear I can hear the call light flicker, waiting for me to notice, waiting for me to come back. The rain never stopped that night. It didn't matter that I'd left St. Mary's behind, in my dreams. The storm followed me, pounding against windows I didn't recognize, dripping down walls I thought I knew. I'd wake in a cold sweat, my heart hammering as if I'd been running through those endless hallways again. The fluorescent light of my bedroom flickered once, twice, and I'd flinch, convinced it was the 6th floor. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. How could I explain that the hospital had left something behind in me, something patient and hungry, that whispered through static and shadow alike? I tried normalcy. My shifts at the new hospital were routine, medication rounds, charting vitals, comforting anxious patients. But even there, I couldn't shake the weight of what had followed me. Every corner felt sharper. Every monitor beeped just a little too loud. Every empty room seemed poised to swallow me whole. I avoided the 6th floor, though I worked nights. I avoided rooms with red call lights, even if I knew logically that they were functioning normally. My hands shook sometimes while I took a patient's pulse, and I felt an endless pull towards something I didn't want to acknowledge. And then it began to bleed into reality in ways I couldn't ignore. It started with the whispers. Faint at first, like static, crawling just beneath the hum of the fluorescent lights. I'd hear them at the nurse's station, murmurs of a voice I knew too well. Don't leave. Don't leave me again. I would whip around, pulse spiking, but the hallway would be empty. My coworkers noticed me jumping at shadows, but I brushed it off as fatigue, long shifts, the toll of night nursing. I wanted to believe it. I wanted desperately to tell myself it was nothing. I never thought the smell of diesel could feel like a warning. Not the usual sour tinge of exhaust that clung to the asphalt at dawn, but something heavier, sticky, and alive, settling on the back of my throat. That night, as I pulled the door open at Lone Pine Truck Stop, the neon flickered overhead like a stuttering heartbeat. The hum of the lights buzzed against my skin, the linoleum under my boots cold and grimy, and I realized I was already too late. I'm Derica Malone, 27. I took this graveyard shift because I had no other choice, and maybe because I thought I could outrun the past. 7 years of construction work, gone. One reckless night, one stupid decision, and suddenly my life had room only for regret and late-night coffee. Lone Pine wasn't glamorous, it wasn't safe, but it was steady, and I needed steady. Some nights, though, steady felt like a lie. By midnight, the lot was empty. Only the distant thrum of engines rolling down Highway 49 punctuated the night. I wiped the counter again, fingers dragging over old coffee stains and sticky crumbs. The refrigerators hummed. Insects tapped insistently against the glass, like tiny fingers scratching to get in. Every time I blinked, I thought I saw a shadow in the corner of the lot, something too tall, too thin, moving in ways that didn't belong to a human. It started small. $1 on the counter, a crack in the fluorescent light. I noticed the smell, first, like iron and something sweeter, almost like burnt sugar. My hands shook when I reached for the paper towels, and that's when I saw him. A semi had rolled in, sudden and impossible quiet, its engine low and growling, but not loud enough to mask the stillness of the night. Its headlights were off, or maybe they were too dim to cut through the darkness. He climbed down slowly, too slowly, tall, rail-thin, clothes hanging loose, like someone had dressed him in curtains from a cheap motel. His face was hidden under a greasy cap, but the way he moved, hesitant, deliberate, made my stomach twist. He didn't speak at first. He just wandered the snack aisles, fingers brushing over jerky, chips, and candy bars as though memorizing them. Then he came to the counter. Instead of a crumpled $1, he placed a small tarnished button. round, old, dull brass. It sat there like a token or a promise. My stomach turned. Pump. 7? His voice was low, gravelly, deliberate. I swallowed hard. There's only 6 pumps. He tilted his head. Then check again. The way he smiled, no teeth, just the stretching of his lips made me flinch. My pulse spiked. The hum of the refrigerators was deafening. The lights above flickered. Something about him felt wrong in a way that couldn't be explained, but my brain was running out of explanations. I tried to focus on the register, focus on the mundane, receipts, coins, coffee pots, but the semi loomed beyond the window, black chrome reflecting the flickering neon. A shiver ran through me. I remembered why I'd taken this job, why I drove hundreds of miles in silence every week, counting headlights, hoping for closure. My sister Janelle had vanished hitchhiking years ago, last seen at a truck stop just like this one. I hadn't told anyone, not the cops, not my mom, how desperately I wanted answers. But I was learning that some answers weren't meant to be found. By 12:45, the man was gone. The button stayed. I stared at it, traced its edges with trembling fingers. Something in my gut told me it wasn't just metal. It was a marker, a message, a beginning. I went outside to smoke, hoping the night would calm me. The air was thick, humid, buzzing with insects. That's when I saw it. The semis. Door swung open like a mouth yawning. The cab darker than the night around it. My breath caught. Inside, taped across the dash, were dozens of Polaroids. Faces froze mid-scream, eyes wide with terror. And there, my sister, Janelle, hair plastered to her face, eyes wide, mouth open in some silent plea. I reached for the photo. My fingers grazed the glossy edge when the shadow moved behind me. He was there, taller than before, impossibly still, smiling. Working alone tonight? His voice low, calm, knife glinting in the neon. I ran. My boots slapped asphalt, heart pounding like a jackhammer in my chest. I pounded on the diner next door, locked. Footsteps followed, slow and deliberate, each one a drumbeat marking my terror. The knife nicked my shoulder. Pain flared sharp and immediate, but I didn't look back. Salvation came in the form of a passing trucker shoving open the diner door. I stumbled inside. The semi roared back onto the highway, tires screaming into the night. Police searched. Found nothing. Truck gone, man gone, Polaroids gone. I told them I might have been imagining it. They nodded. Didn't look me in the eye. Didn't understand. I couldn't tell them how wrong it had felt, how real the terror had been, how the button still burned in my pocket like a secret I wasn't ready to speak aloud. I left Lone Pine. Couldn't stay, couldn't breathe there without feeling watched. But the button came with me. Small, cold, brass. I hid it in my car at first, then my apartment. Every night, I checked my windows, my mirrors, the highway. Every semi's low rumble made my stomach twist, and that's when I realized the night wasn't over. He hadn't left. Part 2 will fully explore Derica's obsessive descent, the symbolic recurrence of the buttons, deeper psychological unraveling, the chilling personal note on Janelle's Polaroid, and the open-ended climax where Derica begins to accept that she is now part of his game, ending with a lingering, haunting fear. I tried to sleep that night, but the apartment smelled wrong. Not just the usual stale air after a long day, but something heavier, metallic, like iron burned, into the walls. The button in my pocket pressed cold against my thigh. I rolled it between my fingers, smooth, round, impersonal, and yet, somehow alive. I started noticing things almost immediately. Tiny details at first, so small I questioned my mind. The button wasn't the only one. Another appeared, tucked, between the pages of a notebook I hadn't opened in months. One on the edge of my pillow, a third on the dashboard of my car. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I dropped them while cleaning. Maybe it was coincidence. But the pattern was undeniable. They weren't random. They were markers, messages, warnings, invitations. I found myself driving past Lone Pine again just to see. Midnight, empty lot, humming neon. Every semi that rolled past made my stomach knot. I watched the dark road, the horizon stretching, into nothing, and I imagined him sitting inside the cab waiting. Every time I blinked, I thought I saw the shadow of a tall, thin man disappearing into the darkness. Work at the diner became unbearable. Every face of a trucker, every casual smile, every casual glance, my mind twisted them into him. His eyes, that smile, the knife glinting. I started sketching him during slow moments, pen scratching against paper in shaky lines, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Each drawing looked more like a caricature, grotesque and yet somehow accurate. It haunted me to look at them, but I couldn't stop. Then came the Polaroid. I was cleaning the counter when I noticed a small envelope tucked under the napkin holder. I froze. Inside was a single photograph. The paper was glossy, cold to the touch. And there she was, Janelle. Younger, hair plastered to her face, eyes wide. But this time there was something new, scribbled on the back in what looked like a child's handwriting. You were too late. I dropped the photo. My hands shook violently. That button burned hotter in my pocket. I knew that he had left this for me. Me, not the police, not anyone else, just me. The thought made bile rise in my throat. Every small detail, every button, every marker was now personal. He knew me. He had always known me. Sleep became impossible. I would wake to the faint hum of a semi idling in the distance, even when there was none. Mirrors in the apartment reflected shadows that didn't belong. The dark corners of rooms seemed to stretch like they were waiting. I stopped going out at night. I started carrying the knife from the diner, not because I thought I could stop him, but because holding it made the fear tangible. It was a talisman against the invisible. Days blurred. The buttons continued appearing in impossible places. My shoe, my purse, under the fridge. I began noticing them in the diner too after shifts. Tiny brass markers that made my chest seize. Every time I felt him there watching, waiting, enjoying, teaching me that the search I had devoted years to, the hours driving, the hope of closure, wasn't mine. It had been his all along. One night I drove back to Lone Pine. Midnight. Fog rolling in thick, the neon humming. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until they ached. The lot was empty. Too empty. I stepped out of the car, boots crunching against asphalt. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to run, but I couldn't. Not now. Not ever. The semi was there, parked where I had last seen it, black and humming with quiet menace. The door swung, open on its own. I froze. Inside, more Polaroids taped across the dash. Faces frozen mid-scream, eyes wide with terror. And there, once again, Janelle. My little sister, eyes pleading, hair plastered, mouth slightly open. I stepped closer. A note slipped from beneath the dashboard. I picked it up with trembling fingers. I've been waiting for you. I turned. Of course, he was behind me. Taller, thinner than memory, smiling without teeth, glinting knife in hand. But I didn't run this time. I felt something shift. Years of searching, years of hope, of listening for engines and counting headlights had led me here, to him. And in that moment, it didn't feel like fear so much as inevitability. I whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of the neon. I hear you. He tilted his head, small laugh escaping, high and soft, like wind over dry leaves. The night swallowed us. The semi's engine hummed. I don't know if I ran or if I walked. I don't know if he let me go or if I simply became part of his game. All I know is the buttons. They keep appearing. On my pillow, in my car, under the counter, at work. Sometimes in my dreams I wake to see him sitting across from me, watching, smiling. And I realize with a sinking certainty, I am no longer searching for her. I am waiting. And tonight, as I sit with a single brass button in my palm, tracing its edges with shaking fingers, I hear it, the low rumble of a semi far down the highway. And I know he's out there, always out there, waiting, collecting, watching. I whisper into the empty night again, letting my voice carry, letting the darkness hear. I hear you. The wind answers with nothing but a whisper and a hum, and I understand that the game has only begun. Welcome, sleepy one. I'll be your storyteller tonight. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, close your eyes. Let's begin. I never thought I'd end up working nights again. After what happened at my last job, I'd sworn I'd never let another place chew me up like that. My old editor had this way of breaking you down piece by piece, calling my photos soulless, derivative, cliché garbage, even when I knew they were good. Once he made me redo a 700-shot portfolio over a single weekend, only to publish the exact ones he'd trashed. That was the kind of poison I walked away from. But bills don't care about promises. Rent, groceries, car note, they keep coming. So when Harbor Light magazine called, I said yes before I even thought it through. They specialized in glossy lifestyle spreads, celebrity features, high-end events, the kind of work that pretended the world was clean. On my first day, walking into their office felt different. The walls were painted a warm blush, not that sterile white most newsrooms wore like armor. Soft light pooled instead of glaring down. It felt more like a cafe than a newsroom, like the place was trying to convince you it was safe. My office was tucked into a quiet corner, my own office for the first time. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, smiling at the absurdity of it. "Hey, new guy," someone called. I turned. A woman in a yellow cardigan waved, strands of hair loose from a messy bun. "Welcome to the madhouse," she said, grinning. I laughed lightly. "Thanks." "Name's Sam," she said. "Photodesk's lucky to have you." I nodded and slipped inside. The moment the door clicked shut, I let out a slow breath. Maybe, just maybe, I'd found a place that wouldn't ruin me. I unpacked my gear, flipped through my old shots. Wedding laughter frozen mid-air, gala lights on champagne glass rims, kids with ice cream melting down their wrists. My last boss called it stock. Finesse magazine called it iconic. The knock startled me. "Come in," I said. The man who entered moved like someone who didn't need to introduce himself. Late 40s, maybe 50, gray at the edges of a sharp beard, navy suit perfectly pressed. "Nolan?" he asked. "Yes, sir." I stood. He extended his hand. "Grant, editor-in-chief, welcome aboard." His handshake was firm, deliberate. "Thank you," I said. "I'm excited to be here." He nodded once, gesturing to the chair across from mine. "I'll get straight to it. You've got a good eye, subtle, sharp, you blend in. Most photographers want to be noticed. You don't. You disappear until the moment matters." I wasn't sure what to say. "I just try to stay out of the way," I managed. Grant leaned in slightly, his voice soft but weighted. "There's a job I want you to handle, something delicate. You'll hear about it from no one but me." My brow furrowed. "On my first day?" He smiled faintly. "I don't waste time." He didn't give details, just said it was confidential and high priority. That night, lying awake in my apartment, ceiling fan spinning shadows across the walls, I kept thinking about it. That strange confidence in his tone, the secrecy. A job between just him and me. Excitement tangled with unease in my chest. The next morning, Grant appeared again at my office. He flipped through my photos, nodded once, and shut the door. "This is what I need from you," he said, lowering his voice. "There's a group in this city who think they own it. Politicians, surgeons, business heads, developers, the kind of men who make laws without offices. Every Friday after midnight, they meet at an abandoned bungalow on East Harbor Street." He paused, searching my face. I said nothing. I used to run a crime magazine, he continued. We dug into corruption, trafficking, black market deals, but every time we got close, something killed the story. Funding vanished, files disappeared, sources went dark. His jaw tightened. And who do you think was behind it? The same group, I said quietly. He nodded. Exactly. I need evidence. Photos, faces, proof, something they can't bury. His tone was low, deliberate. A cold weight settled behind my ribs. Why me? I asked. Grant's eyes narrowed slightly, amused. Because you're new, they don't know you, and you're good at being invisible. He gave a humorless smile. That's why. For a long second I said nothing. Part of me wanted to laugh, to tell him I was a photographer, not a spy. I shot weddings and fundraisers, not midnight conspiracies. But another part, the restless one that never stopped chasing the next edge, leaned forward. All right, I said finally. I'll do it. Friday came too fast. I dressed in black, hoodie, cap, cargo pants, the kind of outfit that made you vanish. I parked 2 blocks from East Harbor and walked through the kind of quiet that makes your own breathing sound too loud. The bungalow sagged under its own rot, boards over windows, porch half collapsed. I slipped around the back and into the basement, just like Grant had said. He promised a spot with the perfect view of the room. My flashlight flickered to life. The air was damp, metallic, and the smell hit first. Not mildew, iron. The concrete floor was streaked with dark stains. Candles sat in a rough circle, melted down to nubs. My stomach twisted. I raised the camera, snapped a few shots, each click echoing faintly. Then came the sound, footsteps above me, voices. I killed the light and ducked behind a broken shelving unit, heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. The basement door creaked open. 11 figures entered, cloaked in crimson, faces shadowed. I lifted the camera again, hands slick. Through the lens, the mayor, the hospital's chief surgeon, the real estate magnate from the news. Familiar, powerful, smiling faintly as they formed the circle. The time has come, one intoned. The oath must be renewed. The circle must be complete. My mouth went dry. Since the death of Gordon, we are 11, another voice said. Tonight, we welcome the 12th. I froze. 12th? Bring him in, someone ordered. 2 members dragged a goat into the circle. Blood trailed behind it, glistening under the candlelight. I took the shot. One more flash, one more piece of proof, and then a hand clamped onto my shoulder. I spun, sucking in a breath. Shh, a familiar voice whispered. My flashlight slipped from my fingers. Grant. Relief surged, then curdled. He was wearing a red robe. The hood framed his face like something holy and wrong. My throat closed. Follow me, he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. Do it, and you'll live. Refuse, and you won't walk out of here. My pulse thundered in my ears. I looked at him, then at the circle. Every face turned toward me now, half hidden, half smiling, like they already knew how this ended. Grant's hand pressed against my back, guiding me forward. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't the observer. I was the offering. The 12th. 6 months later, I sit at my desk, the monitor's cold light washing over my face. My fingers hover above the keyboard, scrolling through the photos I'm known for. Weddings, charity galas, kids laughing in sunlight. All the moments that make people believe the world is kind. No one sees the others, the ones buried behind encrypted drives, proof of what I've become. Every Friday, they still meet. Every Friday, I take orders. A phone call here, a delivery there. Sometimes worse. I told myself I could escape, that I could find a way out. But once you're inside, you don't leave. You just learn to serve. I'm not writing this as a warning. I'm writing it because the truth rots when buried too long. You think you're free. You think your choices are your own. But you're not. You're part of the same machine, a pawn just like me. And the worst part is I don't know who I despise more, them or the man I've become. I never thought I'd still be working nights past my 20s, but here I am, 33, running on caffeine and habit, still trapped in fluorescent purgatory. I started at the shipping warehouse when I was 28. Back then I swore it was temporary, just a few months to get on my feet, a pit stop between real jobs. But paychecks have a way of softening conviction. Rent gets paid, groceries appear, and before you know it, 5 years slide by like spilled water on concrete. Nights do something to you. They bend time, hollow it out. Friends stop calling because you're never awake when they are. Birthdays, barbecues, Saturday nights, they fade into a different life you can't quite reach anymore. My mom used to say, night jobs eat people alive. They turn you into ghosts. I'd laughed then. Now, when I see my reflection at 3 a.m., pale, sleepless eyes under buzzing lights, I almost laugh again, but quieter. The warehouse hums with its own rhythm. Conveyor belts stretch like arteries, feeding boxes into the endless dark. Forklifts shriek in reverse, echoing off metal shelving that climbs 20 feet high. The air smells like melted plastic and oil, and it seeps into your skin no matter how long you scrub. The break room's worse. Burnt popcorn, stale coffee, and the low hum of the vending machine that eats your dollar without apology. The crew's a patchwork of tired souls. Tommy, who hums off-key R&B like he's on stage somewhere better, and Ray, always late, shirt half untucked. Red Bull glued to his hand, forever on the edge of getting fired, but somehow never does. Nobody's close, but there's a kind of quiet respect between us. Shared fatigue, mutual survival. I clock in at 10, clock out around 6, sometimes later if we're backed up. Same rhythm, same hum. Until July, that's when he arrived. The first night I saw him, I knew he didn't fit. Older guy, maybe mid-40s. Pressed khakis, clean shoes, too polished for this place. The kind of guy who'd get sweat stains just looking at a pallet jack. He didn't say much, just followed the supervisor around like a shadow, nodding at everything as if every beep and clang held great meaning. Second night, same thing. Silent, observing. I figured he was a temp, one of those agency guys corporate ships in when we're short-staffed. They never last long. But the third night, something in the air shifted. I was in the break room pouring a cup of sludge we called coffee when he walked in. He stared at the machine like it was some kind of test, then turned to me. "You get off right at 6?" he asked. "Or do they ever keep you late?" His voice was smooth but clipped, like someone used to being listened to. I shrugged. "Depends. Sometimes later if we're behind." He smiled. Small, polite, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just curious. I thought nothing of it then. But an hour later, while I was stacking boxes, he wandered by again. "You park in the front lot?" he asked casually. I nodded, chewing a sandwich. "Yeah, easier to get out after shift." He paused, studying me longer than felt normal. "Smart," he said finally. "My car's in the back. Might move it tomorrow." The way he said it wasn't casual, it was like he was recording details. From then on, I couldn't shake it. Wherever I went, he followed. Change aisles, he'd appear minutes later. Switch break times. Somehow he'd sync his up too. Like my reflection, one step behind watching. Once I went to the far side of the warehouse for some quiet, just to get away from the noise and hum of the machines. And damn if he didn't show up there too, leaning on the same stack of boxes, sipping a blue Gatorade, the same one I always bought. The sight of it made my stomach twitch. I brushed it off. Coincidence, I told myself. But then came the night I noticed something I couldn't shake. We were eating the exact same thing. Microwave burrito, blue Gatorade, pack of crackers, same as me, down to the brand. That's when the crawl started. This subtle, itchy awareness under my skin that something wasn't right. Then the keycard incident happened. I always clip mine to my belt. Always. Halfway through shift one night, I reached down to swipe out for lunch and it was gone. Not misplaced, gone. I retraced every step for almost an hour, scanning the floors, checking the break room, the bathrooms. Nothing. That keycard was practically a part of me, and now it had vanished. Later that night, around 3 a.m., I was zoning out in the break room. The only sound was the buzz of the vending machine and the low hum of the fridge. There's a big window overlooking the front parking lot, just rows of cars under sodium lamps, the kind that make everything look orange and sick. I was staring through it when something snapped me awake. My car door wide open. My pulse slammed against my throat. I bolted outside, spilling my coffee on the floor, heart pounding so loud it felt like someone else's footsteps behind me. The air was cold, sharp. The lot was empty. My glove box hung open like a mouth. I always keep it locked. Everything seemed untouched except one thing: the spare apartment key I hid in the back corner. Gone. I went straight to security. The guard squinted at the screen as we watched the footage. The cameras are ancient, grainy, slow, maybe 15 frames a second. The tape showed a blur of movement, a shape leaning into my car, then walking away. Could have been anyone. Could have been him. The guard just shrugged. We'll log it. Keep an eye out. Like it was nothing. After that, I started parking under the only working floodlight on the far side of the lot. Didn't matter. Every night when I walked out, that feeling crept up the back of my neck, like something was watching from behind the glare. Then I noticed the white sedan, 4-door tinted windows. First night, parked across the street from my apartment. Second night, same spot. Third night, half a block closer. Fourth night, gone. Fifth night, back again. That same shift, I caught him by my station. I was scanning boxes. He was just standing there, arms folded, not pretending to do anything, watching me. I forced a half smile. Hey, you been parking in the front lot lately? He tilted his head, eyes unreadable. Why? Because someone broke into my car. He smiled, slow, like he was savoring the line. That's wild. People do anything these days. Then he turned and walked away, no hurry at all. That night I stepped outside for air. Lit a cigarette, leaned on the railing, tried to steady my breathing. The lot looked still until I caught movement. Someone crouched by my car, not rummaging, just squatting, hands on their knees, staring at the wheel well like they were studying it. I dropped the cigarette and ran. By the time I got there, nothing. No running footsteps, no car driving off. Just silence and my own breath fogging the air. Then I saw it lying by my tire. My old key card. I didn't go back inside. I sat in my car with the doors locked until sunrise, every passing shadow making me flinch. On the drive home, I checked my mirrors constantly, convinced I'd see headlights trailing too close. At my apartment, I locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, drew every curtain tight. Sleep didn't even cross my mind. Then at 6:45 a.m., the exact time I usually get home from work, I heard it. The soft metallic sound of my doorknob jiggling. My body froze, every muscle locked. The sound stopped after a few seconds. I waited, counted 60, then another 60. Finally, I crept to the peephole, nothing, but then faintly, footsteps. Slow, careful, fading down the hall. I filed a police report the next morning, told them everything. The key card, the car, the missing key, the timing. They were polite but distracted, their pens moving slow. They promised to look into it. That night, HR called me in. The temp hadn't shown up. No call, no notice. They pulled his file. No badge ever issued. Time card handwritten. I called the agency myself, gave them his name. They said no one by that name had ever been assigned to our site. It was like he'd never existed. I changed my locks, bought a door camera, moved my spare key to a locked drawer in my bedroom. I don't keep anything in my glove box anymore. But some nights, walking to my car, I still feel it. That sharp prickle between my shoulder blades, that invisible weight of someone's gaze in the dark. I don't know what he wanted or why it was me. All I know is that I keep my keys somewhere new now, somewhere no one will ever find them. I never thought 24 would still find me under fluorescent lights, breathing recycled air, counting bills that smelled faintly of gasoline. When I was younger, I pictured something else. Degree finished, an apartment in the city, a job that didn't make my hands smell like coins and cleaning spray. But life bends quietly without asking. When Dad had his stroke at 20, everything I'd saved vanished into hospital bills and overdue notices. Mom picked up double shifts at the diner, and I started working nights wherever they'd take me. That's how I landed here, Hollow Pines Gas and Go, a lonely 24-hour station off Route 17, where the hum of the ice cooler fills the silence and moths fling themselves at the buzzing lights like they're trying to end it all. Most nights, it's the same faces. Half-asleep truckers chasing caffeine, locals craving smokes or conversation, and me behind the counter pretending the isolation doesn't crawl under my skin. There's a strange comfort in routine. The soft rattle of candy bars being restocked at 2 a.m., the metallic drip of coffee, the faint thud of my own pulse in the stillness. The whole world outside feels paused. After nearly a year of these shifts, I'd memorized the rhythms. Old Man Price with his unclaimed scratch-offs. Jen from the nursing home with her tired Thursday smile. The steady rotation of truckers who nodded but never spoke. And then, one Wednesday, he showed up. It was cold enough that night for the doors to sweat frost, the kind that webs the glass and makes the parking lot lamps look like halos. Around 1 a.m., the chime above the door broke the quiet. He stepped in, mid-40s, maybe older, wearing a cracked brown jacket that smelled faintly of rain and exhaust. His hair was disheveled, his face pale under the buzzing light, lips dry like they hadn't touched water in days. He didn't browse, didn't move, just stood near the counter, eyes locked on me like he was searching for a memory that wouldn't come. "Evening?" I said, forcing casual warmth. "You always work this late?" His voice was soft, too sure, like he already knew. "Mostly," I said, trying not to sound defensive. He nodded, gaze sliding across the countertop, then back to me. "Figured. I've passed by a few times. Seems like it's always you here." I managed a thin smile. Small town. Not a big staff. But he didn't leave. He just lingered, breathing slow, like silence was a conversation. Then he said, "Your name's Leia, right?" I froze. No name tag. No uniform label. My heart stuttered, heat climbing my neck. Before I could ask how he knew, his eyes flicked toward the whiteboard by the coffee station. The one where I'd scrawled, "Cinnamon hazelnut is back." Font 49 in red marker. "You've got nice handwriting," he said quietly. "Most people dot their I's with circles. You use slashes. It's distinct. Thoughtful." The hum of the lights grew louder, pressing against the silence between us. I didn't know what to say. After a beat too long, he gave the faintest nod, almost like he'd confirmed something, and smiled without showing his teeth. "I'm Ray," he said finally, voice low, eyes still fixed on mine. "Just curious, that's all." Then he turned and walked out, the door chime cutting through the hum of the lights as his shape vanished into the fog pressing against the glass. I stood there for a while, pretending to finish wiping the counter, waiting for the sound of his car to fade. At first I chalked it up to small-town weirdness. People notice things here, talk too much, remember faces that don't matter. But then he came back. Not every night, just often enough to make the hair on my arms lift when headlights slowed near the pumps. Sometimes he came inside. Sometimes he sat in his car with the engine off, just a shadow behind the glass. One night he bought a bottle of water and lingered by the counter, fingers tracing the condensation. "You're quieter tonight," he said, like he'd been keeping track. "Long shift," I muttered, pretending to count bills. He tilted his head, scanning the store, the aisles, the clock, the back door. "It must get lonely," he said. "Just you out here in the dark. No one else for miles." "I'm fine," I answered too quickly. He leaned in slightly, his voice calm, conversational. "You ever get scared? Being a woman out here alone?" That tone, curious, not cruel, was worse than any threat. "Do you need anything else?" I asked, stepping back. He smiled faintly. "Smart, keeping the back room locked. You check it around 2 every night." My stomach turned to stone. "I'll let you get back to it," he said softly. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." And just like that, he left. After that, I started carrying my keys between my fingers, walking fast to my car with my eyes scanning the shadows. I shoved a tire iron under the counter, changed the curtains in my apartment, showered with the door locked even when I knew no one else was there. Sometimes weeks passed without him showing up, but the silence of his absence was worse. Every creak from the cooler, every sweep of headlights across the lot, made my chest tighten. Then one night, after a short break behind the building, I came back to find something waiting on the counter, a Polaroid. It was me outside by the windshield washer bin. Taken that night. Too close. The word windshield on the bin had my slashed eye circled in red ink. When he showed up next, I didn't wait. "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking. "If you stay, I'll call the cops." He looked almost sad. "I get it. I've been too forward. You've been following me," I snapped. "I just thought, you're the kind of person people misunderstand. I thought maybe you'd appreciate someone who notices." "That's not noticing," I said. "That's obsession." He didn't flinch. "Would it make you feel better if I pretended? Bought a soda? Talked about sports? Acted like I didn't notice your shoes are a half size too big? Or how your eyelid twitches when you're tired?" By then, my thumb was already pressing 911. He didn't move. Just waited. The cops came fast. He didn't fight when they cuffed him. They searched his car and found a notebook, pages of my schedule, my clothes, my groceries. One page with my name written over and over, shrinking into black loops until the ink bled through. He kept saying the same thing as they took him away. I just noticed things. I'm just a curious guy. The restraining order went through that week. I don't work nights anymore. They transferred me to another station 2 hours away. New locks, new curtains, but it didn't really end. Every time headlights stay too long in my mirror, I feel the back of my neck prickle. Every time someone lingers too close at the counter, my throat tightens. And in the quiet of my apartment, when the hum of the fridge fades and the walls settle, sometimes I swear I can still hear him, calm, curious, practiced, saying my name like he's still somewhere out there rehearsing it. I was 22 when I started working nights at a gas station just outside a little town in Missouri called Ashford. Not much to it. Just a lonely stretch of highway with a diner, a liquor store, 2 motels, and our gas station all sitting side by side under the same flickering streetlight. I wasn't from Ashford. I'd come down from Kansas City a few months earlier to crash with my cousin while I figured out what the hell to do with my life. I was broke, jobless, and too damn proud to move back home. So when I saw that crooked hiring sign taped to the station door, I didn't think twice. I pushed it open and the smell of burnt coffee and rubber mats hit me. The manager, Darlene, looked up from behind the counter. Mid-40s, smoker's voice. Blonde roots showing through gray. Hair tied back with a scrunchie that had probably seen the 90s. She squinted at me through her cigarette haze. "You good with staying up late?" "Yeah." "You know how to count change?" "Pretty sure." "You ever call in sick just 'cause you don't feel like working?" I shook my head. "Can't afford to," she smirked. Good enough. That was my interview. By midnight that same night, I was clocked in at Ashford Fuel and Mart. Thursdays through Saturdays, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The job was simple, almost meditative: stock shelves, wipe down the counter, refill the beer coolers, and ring up the occasional trucker or half-drunk kid stumbling in from the bar down the road. Most nights, the only real battle was against sleep. But after 2 months, something shifted. It started one Thursday around 2:30 a.m. I was in the back mopping when the bell over the door chimed. Luke walked in. He covered the weekday shifts, and behind him was his buddy Trevor. Luke was 25, tall, skinny, always in a backward ball cap and a hoodie that smelled faintly of motor oil. Trevor was shorter, with that vacant, too happy grin that told me exactly what I was dealing with. They were tripping hard. "Yo, Jess," Luke grinned, already heading for the coffee machine. "We came to make sure you didn't pass out drooling on the counter." Trevor doubled over laughing. "Dude, imagine customers walking in and she's just out cold. Puddle of drool and everything." I rolled my eyes. "You two are idiots. Coffee's on the left. Try not to break anything." They were ridiculous, but it broke the monotony. High or drunk customers were one thing. When it's your coworker acting like an idiot, it almost feels safe. We talked nonsense for a while. Trevor swore the ceiling tiles looked like a map of the U.S., and Luke kept trying to prove him wrong, both of them wheezing with laughter until they spilled half their coffee. Then Trevor stopped mid-laugh. His grin faded. "Hey, you see that car out there?" "What car?" I asked, glancing toward the window, the one by the dumpster. Lights off, engine running. Someone's inside. Been there since before we pulled in. I frowned. Probably DoorDash. Sometimes they park out there waiting for orders. Trevor shook his head, jittery. Nah, I went out and asked him. Said he was waiting on a delivery, but he didn't have the app open. Just stared. Luke laughed, waving him off. "You're high, Trev. Don't freak Jess out." But I caught the twitch in Luke's jaw as he looked out the window, chewing his lip. He didn't buy it either. After a while, they went back outside with Luke's dog, Rosie, a pit mix with more energy than sense. They tossed a ball around, smoked cigars, laughed too loud under the buzzing lights. I stayed inside, mopping the aisles, pretending not to notice how quiet it got between gusts of wind. About an hour later, the door chimed again. Luke came in, rubbing his arms, his grin gone. "Okay, not to freak you out," he said, lowering his voice. "But that car? Still there? Whole damn time we were outside. The guy keeps watching us like he'll look down at his phone, type something, then just stare again." Back and forth. Trevor nodded quickly, eyes wide. I went up to him, asked what his deal was. He acted like he didn't speak English. The mop handle felt slick in my hand. I glanced through the glass doors toward the dumpster. The car was still there, engine running. Headlights off, no movement. And for the first time since taking the job, the night felt too quiet. Then suddenly he did. Said he had the wrong address and peeled out of there like the pavement was on fire. But get this, Luke cut in, lowering his voice. As soon as he left, another car pulled in. Brand new, no plates, parked in the shadows. When the first guy took off, that one followed him out. Didn't even stop for gas. My stomach nodded. Wait, no plates on either of them? Yeah, Luke said, jaw tight. No temporary tags either. Just nothing. I tried to play it cool, but my pulse was thudding so loud it filled my ears. That's sketchy. You think they were casing the place? Luke shrugged, but his face had gone serious. Don't know. But if me and Trev hadn't been out there, it would have been just you. Alone in here. That thought made my hands go cold. The next night, Friday, I came in hoping it had all been nothing. Just weird coincidence, random creeps. But around 3 a.m., 4 men walked in for coffee and snacks. They looked like farmhands or mechanics, muddy boots, grease under their nails, tired eyes. While I was ringing them up, one of them jerked his thumb toward the windows. Hey, you know whose car that is? Been sitting out by the fence with the lights off. I froze. What car? Looks like a new Subaru, he said. No plates. 2 guys inside, arguing, pointing at the store. My stomach dropped. I told them what had happened the night before about the cars, the guys watching. The tallest one, broad shoulders, square jaw, exchanged a look with his buddy. That's not right, he said quietly. We walked past and they shut up real quick. As soon as they saw us, they reversed and took off. They didn't like leaving me there alone, so they hung around a bit, 20 minutes or so, drinking coffee and talking about hunting season like they weren't half watching the dark outside. When they finally left, they told me to stay safe. I let them refill their cups for free. Grateful didn't even begin to cover it. The car didn't come back that night. But the thought wouldn't let go. Why twice? Why here? Why me? Saturday night started normal. Last shift of the week. A couple of truckers, some drunk college kids, same as always. Then around 3:15 a.m., the chime over the door went off again. 2 men walked in. Both clean-cut, early 30s. Jeans and dark hoodies. Too polished for travelers, too sober for drunks. They didn't browse, didn't make small talk. Just scanned the place like they were memorizing it. One drifted toward the coolers while the other lingered by the counter. His eyes didn't leave mine. Quiet night? He asked casually. Yeah, I said, forcing a small smile. Just the usual. He smiled back, but it didn't touch his eyes. Bet it gets lonely out here. The other man came up, set 2 bottles of water on the counter. He dropped a bill, exact change, before I even said the total. That detail hit me wrong, like they'd practiced it. As they walked out, I caught a glimpse through the glass. A brand new black SUV parked near the fence line, engine running, no plates. They didn't pump gas, didn't grab snacks, just water. And when they stepped outside, they didn't drive away. They walked straight to that SUV and climbed in. I ducked behind the counter and grabbed the phone, my hands trembling. Luke answered, groggy. Jess? Luke, I whispered, voice cracking. They're back, no plates. 2 guys came in, just staring at me. They're sitting out there right now. Luke cursed under his breath. Lock the doors. I'm on my way. I locked up and crouched low behind the counter. The SUV idled in the dark, headlights off. I could swear I saw a faint movement in the back seat, something shifting under a pile of blankets. 5 minutes felt like 20. My heart was pounding so hard it made my stomach twist. Then finally headlights flashed across the lot. Luke's truck. The SUV's lights flicked on at the same moment. It pulled out slow, almost deliberate, before speeding onto the highway and vanishing into the night. Luke burst through the door, breathless. You okay? I nodded, barely holding it together. My throat burned from holding back tears. He looked me dead in the eye. Jess, don't work nights alone anymore. Not till Darlene installs cameras. That wasn't random. They were planning something. I didn't argue. 2 weeks later, I quit. Told Darlene the job wasn't worth it. She rolled her eyes, said I was being dramatic. But I knew better. I never saw that SUV again. Still, every time I drive at night, I catch myself checking my mirrors once, twice, sometimes more, just to make sure no one's following. And I can't forget what Luke said before I left. The words that still crawl under my skin. They weren't in a rush. Just they were patient, like they were waiting for the right night. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a gas station. If you'd asked me a few years back, I'd have told you I'd be anywhere else, doing anything else. I grew up in a small Kansas town, bouncing between odd jobs through high school, then drifted down to Oklahoma thinking life would start to make sense there. It didn't. Instead, I wound up behind the counter of a quick fuel off Highway 169 in Broken Arrow. Not exactly the dream, but it paid rent on my beat-up apartment and kept my old Chevy alive another month at a time. Most nights were uneventful. A few truckers rolled through for diesel. Some locals grabbed smokes or beer before the midnight cutoff. Sometimes a pack of college kids came in buzzing for energy drinks. My shift ran from 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., and I worked it alone. Management liked that, one less paycheck. The cameras were always on, though half the time the monitors froze mid-frame and the back door lock only caught if you slammed it twice. I told myself it was fine. Just me, the hum of the coolers, and the soft flicker of the neon sign bleeding red against the glass. But here's the thing about nights. Silence isn't just absence. It builds, it weighs. It presses in on you until even your thoughts echo too loud in your own skull. Sometimes I'd hum under my breath just to break it, to remind myself the world outside still existed, that I wasn't the last person alive under a dying sky. July made it worse. The heat clung to the pavement like skin, thick and sticky. That was when it happened. Wednesday night, near midnight, I was halfway through my routine, counting the register, sorting scratch-offs, tying up trash bags for the first run out back. The AC groaned uselessly, pushing lukewarm air that smelled faintly of melting candy and plastic wrap. Nobody had come in for almost an hour, not since some delivery driver bought 2 Red Bulls and a pack of jerky around 11. I was thinking about stepping outside just to feel air that didn't taste like dust and Freon. Then the bell above the door jingled. A man walked in, mid-40s maybe, polo shirt tucked into jeans, shoes scuffed and grimy, like he'd been running in them. Sweat glistened across his forehead under the fluorescent lights. He clutched his phone but wasn't looking at it. His eyes were darting fast, searching every corner like he'd lost something or someone. Before I could even say, "Evening," he blurted out, "Hey man, sorry, my wife's in labor. We're trying to get to Hillcrest and... Can I use your restroom real quick?" I pointed toward the hallway. Public restrooms just around the corner. He glanced that way, then shook his head hard. Nah, I mean the employee one. "It's urgent, please." The way he said please wasn't pleading, it was forceful, like a demand dressed up as a favor. He stepped closer, angling toward the side door behind the counter like he already knew where it was. I shifted my stance, blocking his path. "Sorry, man. Can't. Store policy." He froze, then smiled. A quick, stretched grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Come on, she's in the car. I just need a second." The public one was locked at the last place. I've been holding it. Something about the way he said she's in the car made my stomach knot. I didn't move, just held his stare. That's when his eyes flicked. Not at me, not toward the restroom sign, but up, to the mounted camera above the stockroom door. That was when my gut twisted, hard. Every instinct in me screamed that something was off. I lifted my hand casually to the walkie clipped at my collar and pressed the mic button. It wasn't connected to anyone anymore, but he didn't need to know that. "Yeah," I said loud and steady, forcing my voice to sound relaxed. "Can you come up front a sec?" His head snapped toward me. A quick blink, like recalculating. "You working alone?" he asked, too casually, too flat. "Second guy's in the back," I lied without a pause. "He'll be out in a minute." We just stood there, me blocking his way, him trying to decide what came next. Then like a switch flipped, he smiled again. "All good, man. Didn't mean to freak you out." He backed off slow, wandered toward the coolers, opened one like he was browsing. The hum of the fridge filled the silence. He grabbed a bottle of water, then drifted through the gum and chip aisle, pretending this was just another stop on a normal night. I didn't blink. Not once. Finally, he came back to the counter and set the bottle down with a soft thunk. "Long night, huh?" he said, all fake ease. "Yep," I muttered, scanning the barcode. $1.89. He handed me a 5. And the whole time, while I made change, while I printed the receipt, he never looked away. Not once. His stare felt heavy, like it had weight, like he was measuring me, testing something. Then he gave a short nod and turned for the door. I leaned to the side window, tracking him, expecting him to head for a car. But he didn't. He walked around the corner of the building and disappeared. No headlights, no engine. Just gone. My throat felt dry, rough. Maybe his car was parked off to the side, I told myself. Maybe his wife was out there, maybe. But my gut didn't buy it. 5 long minutes crawled by. I tried to focus, restocking candy bars, lining up gum, but my eyes kept darting to the monitor, my hands hovering near the crowbar stashed under the register. Finally, I grabbed the trash bag, slipped on gloves, and nudged the back door open. The night air hit me like a furnace, thick, still, trapped. The alley behind the store shimmered with heat, a dim orange glow bleeding from the lone streetlight 30 feet away. The dumpster squatted in its concrete nook. I stepped out, letting the door close behind me. Started walking toward the dumpster, plastic crinkling in my hands. Halfway there, I heard it, a faint scuff like a shoe dragging over grit. I turned. He was there, standing half in shadow behind the dumpster. No smile this time, no bottle. Just something dark and wrinkled hanging from his hands. Looked like rubber gloves. His breathing came fast, shallow, like he'd been working himself up. We stared at each other. Neither of us spoke. The air buzzed, thick with heat and tension. Every instinct screamed move. I turned and walked back, fast but steady, forcing calm into my steps. My hand found the door handle. For one awful second, my mind flashed, what if it jams? Sometimes it stuck, you had to yank hard. This time it opened smooth. I slipped inside, slammed it, twisted the lock so hard it rattled. My heart pounded in my ears like gunfire. I grabbed the phone, dialed non-emergency, and told them a man had been loitering out back, possibly tried to enter. 12 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up, blue lights washing the lot. 2 officers stepped in, polite but alert. I told them everything, every detail. They checked the alley with flashlights, circled the building twice. The man was gone, but they found something in the dirt behind the dumpster. Deep footprints like someone had been standing there a long time. And one black rubber glove, inside out. One of the cops hooked it with his pen, studying it. "Door might have saved your life tonight," he said. They offered to hang around while I finished lockup, but my shift had 6 hours left. I said I'd be fine, was I? Maybe, maybe not. That night I checked every lock twice. Didn't tell my manager, didn't want to lose the shift. I'd always liked nights. The quiet, the solitude. Now there's a crowbar behind the counter and another by the back door. And when I take out the trash, I move fast. One hand on the bag, the other on the handle. I never thought a warehouse job would be the thing that ruined my sleep for the rest of my life. I was 27 when it happened. Back then, I was working nights as a shift manager at a distribution center just outside Joliet, Illinois. It wasn't one of those massive Amazon complexes with self-driving robots and digital scanners. This place was old school, a squat concrete building from the late 70s, with dusty rafters, rusting support beams, and towering rows of steel shelves stacked with pallets, boxes, and shrink-wrapped freight that always seemed one wrong move away from collapsing. I'd taken the job after getting laid off from a car parts factory. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me afloat. The night shift was usually slow and predictable. Unload trucks, stock the shelves, prep orders for the morning drivers. My crew of 5 worked under me. We weren't family, but we were close enough. A ragtag bunch of exhausted, nicotine-stained insomniacs who chain-drank gas station coffee and complained about day shift bosses who'd never once seen 3 a.m. under fluorescent light. That winter, my crew was made up of Luis, 31, lean, restless father of 2 working 2 jobs to survive, sharp tongue, soft heart. Then there was Tommy, 24, baby-faced and jittery, saving up for trade school. Ray, 42, big guy with a gut and a voice made for bad rock covers. He'd sing "Don't Stop Believin'" at 2 a.m. just to kill the silence. Sarah, 29, quiet but tough as nails. She didn't take crap from anyone, not even me. And Calvin, 35, wiry and sarcastic, always puffing his vape or rambling about shadow governments and lizard people. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. For a while, it really was just a job, until the night started changing. It began small. Boxes moved when no one was near them. Perfectly stacked pallets would suddenly shift and topple like someone had shoved them. The first time I figured a forklift must have clipped it, but the cameras showed nothing. Then the lights and the old overhead fluorescents started flickering in full rows, whole aisles blinking out at once, plunging sections into thick, suffocating dark. Maintenance swore it was bad wiring, but the circuits checked out fine. The worst part wasn't the noise or the mess. It was the feeling. That slow prickling awareness that someone's watching you. We all felt it. Sometimes you'd catch a blur between the shelves, like someone ducking just out of sight. We laughed it off at first. Air currents, Ray said. Rats, Sarah muttered. Shadow people, Calvin joked. But laughter doesn't last long when it keeps happening every single night. Then came the night around 1 a.m., when I heard a crash from aisle 19. I grabbed my flashlight, half expecting another stack gone over. But when I turned the corner, my breath hitched. Every single box along one side of the aisle had been pushed outward exactly 1 inch, perfectly even. Like a giant hand had swept through, testing the line. I froze. My light caught specks of dust swirling in the air, falling slow like ash. No rats, no forklifts, no people, just silence and then movement. Not footsteps, but something faster. Lower to the ground, darting through the shadows. The shelves trembled beside me as it passed, a ripple of vibration that went straight through my bones. I didn't tell the crew that night. Didn't want to feed their paranoia. But the next evening as we clocked in, Luis cornered me by the time clock. Boss, he said quietly, eyes darting toward the dark aisles. You seen it yet? Seen what? I asked, trying to sound casual. He gave me a look, tired, knowing. Don't play dumb. The thing that's been moving around in here. We all know it's there, Luis said, his voice low but steady. Ain't no raccoon running through steel beams? Man, that was the first time any of us admitted it out loud, that there was something else inside that warehouse with us. Over the next week, things escalated fast. The noises changed from crashes and whispers to screams that echoed through the aisles. Warped, electronic sounding, like a person shouting through a broken speaker. The lights would flicker and cut out in patterns, one section at a time, almost like it was hurting us, pushing us where it wanted. We reported it to management. Our supervisor just laughed. Ghost stories don't pay invoices, he said. Get back to work before I start cutting hours. So it was on us. By Thursday, we were all running on caffeine and fear. The break room felt smaller than ever, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the vending machine humming like white noise. Ray slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the plastic coffee cups jump. Either we do something about this, he snapped, or I'm done. I'm not coming back here to be some goddamn chew toy. Sarah looked up from her mug. He's right, she said quietly. It's hunting us. You feel it too, don't you? Tommy's voice trembled. So what do we do? You can't shoot a ghost. We don't even know what it is. Calvin muttered. Could be something feral living in the walls. Or worse, I read about what no conspiracy crap I cut in. My palms were slick with sweat. We make a plan. That night we decided on a trap. Each of us would hide near one of the warehouse's 5 main light switches. When the lights went out, whoever was near the affected row would yell our signal. A loud, clear, ah, and we'd all rush in. Catch it, or at least see it. It wasn't much of a plan, but we were desperate. By 2 a.m. we were in position. We'd stacked boxes for cover, hearts hammering. I could hear Tommy's ragged breathing even across the room. Fast, shallow, uneven. Sweat prickled down my spine, pooling at my waistband. The air was thick with dust and that dry chemical tang of cardboard and oil. Minutes stretched into hours. Nothing, just the hum of the fluorescents and the occasional groan of shifting steel. I started to think maybe the thing knew. Maybe it was watching us wait. Then, click. The northern row went black. Ah, Ray's voice cut through the silence. Loud, raw, like the signal we'd practiced. But then it changed. His tone broke, cracked, rising into something animal. A wet, strangled scream that scraped at the walls. Go, go, I shouted. We bolted from our hiding spots, boots pounding concrete, flashlights jerking wildly. Sarah and Luis flanked left. Calvin darted ahead of me. Tommy stumbled and nearly fell. The sound of Ray's screaming turned from fear to pain, real pain, ragged and high-pitched, like something being torn apart. By the time we reached him, it was already too late. Ray was on the floor, and what was left of him barely looked human. His body had been torn open, ribs cracked wide like kindling, skin shredded, eyes glassy and unseeing. The concrete beneath him was slick with blood that shimmered under the emergency light. Sarah gagged and stumbled back, hand over her mouth. Tommy dropped to his knees, sobbing. Luis just kept whispering, "Holy shit, holy shit," over and over, voice hollow. That's when the sound hit us. A deep, vibrating howl that wasn't animal or human. It was wet, guttural, like it came from somewhere inside the concrete itself. It shook the shelving units, made metal clatter against metal. "Grab him," I shouted. "We're not leaving him here." We did what we could, slid what was left of Ray onto a pallet jack and started dragging him toward the loading dock. My arms burned. The lights above flickered violently, casting the room in strobe flashes of white and black. And then, boom, total darkness. Footsteps followed, heavy, fast, close. Each thud of its weight sent vibrations through the floor, rattling the racks beside us. "Move! Move!" I yelled. We burst through the dock door and stumbled into the freezing night. Our breath came out in clouds. Luis and Calvin slammed the door shut and we barricaded it with whatever we could find. Pallets, chains, shrink wrap, metal rods. Then we called 911. Every one of us shaking, sitting in our cars in the dark lot. Headlights pointed at the warehouse like we expected it to burst open. The cops came first, flashing lights washing over the concrete. They looked at us like we were crazy, until they saw Ray's body. Then it was all radios crackling, more cars pulling in, ambulances, crime scene tape. By sunrise, corporate showed up. Suits, polished shoes. No emotion. They said nothing, just handed us thick envelopes. Severance NDAs went and made us sign. A week later, the warehouse was shut down. 2 weeks after that, demolished. Official statement: infrastructure instability. But those of us who were there, me, Sarah, Luis, Calvin, Tommy, we know the truth. Demolishing the walls didn't destroy what lived inside. It was never about the building. It was about the dark. And some nights, when I'm driving past empty industrial lots, I swear I see it. Movement in the shadows of those half-built steel skeletons. Just standing there, still and patient, waiting to be let back in. I never thought much about working nights at a hotel. Honestly, I kinda liked it. I've never been a morning person, and something about clocking in at 10 and finishing at 6 fit my rhythm perfectly. The place wasn't some fancy chain or downtown high-rise, just a small, family-owned hotel off the interstate in a quiet Ohio town. 3 floors, maybe 40 rooms total. On weeknights, barely a dozen were occupied. My job was simple: sit at the desk, answer the phones, check in late guests, keep an eye on things. Most nights it was dead quiet. Just me, the hum of vending machines, and the soft rattle of the air vents. I'd read, scroll my phone, or lose time watching random YouTube videos. The lobby was small, warm with that mix of stale coffee and disinfectant. A few couches faced a TV mounted on the wall, and behind the front desk was a little glass window office where I could sit and still see everything. When I first got the job, my sister had laughed. "That's how all horror movies start, man. Night clerk at some lonely hotel off the highway. You better watch your back." I'd rolled my eyes. Truth was, I felt safe enough. The front doors locked automatically after midnight. Guests had to buzz in, and I could see them on the monitor before pressing the button. Cameras covered every hallway, the stairwells, the lot outside. Nothing about it ever seemed dangerous, until one night proved me dead wrong. It was late October, about a year ago now. I'd been working there 6 months, long enough to know every creak in the floor and every flicker of the fluorescent bulbs. Around 11 p.m., I was going through the day's check-in logs when the buzzer sounded. I looked up. A man stood outside beneath the porch light. Mid-40s maybe, tall and lean in a worn denim jacket and a cap pulled low. A backpack hung off one shoulder. I pressed the buzzer. He stepped inside, moving slowly like his joints ached. "Evening," he said, voice low and even. "Evening," I answered, giving him my practiced smile. "Looking for a room tonight?" "Yeah, just one night." I quoted the rate. He nodded, slid a credit card across the counter. The reader beeped. Approved. I handed him the key card to 205. Second floor. Elevator's right over there. He didn't thank me, just stared. Too long. Blank expression, no emotion, eyes that didn't seem to blink. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. I exhaled slowly, brushing it off. Some people are just off. You learn that working nights. About an hour later, I nearly jumped out of my chair. The man was back. He didn't come to the desk this time, just walked past me and sat on one of the couches in the lobby. The TV was off, but he sat down like he was watching it anyway. At first I told myself it was fine. Some guests came down when they couldn't sleep. But 20 minutes passed. Then 30. He hadn't moved. No phone, no book, no expression. Just staring at the blank screen like it was showing him something I couldn't see. The air felt heavier, the hum of the vending machine louder. I stood, crossed to grab a bottle of water, and I swear, I could feel his eyes follow me the entire way. I didn't look, but the skin on my neck prickled. When I sat back down, my chest was tight. My stomach had this slow, twisting weight. I pulled up the reservation system just to distract myself. That's when I saw it. Room 205 listed as vacant. I froze. I double-checked. Nothing. No name, no charge, no record. I flipped through the payment screen. No transaction, no card history. I just stared at the monitor, heartbeat crawling into my throat. I knew I'd swiped that card. Heard the beep, printed the damn key, but the system was blank, as if he'd never checked in at all. I picked up the phone and dialed room 205. It rang. And rang, but no one answered. The hollow tone filled the quiet lobby, echoing faintly against the tile and glass. A cold knot tightened in my chest. I pulled up the key card entry log, the system that tracks every time a guest opens their door. 0 activity for 205 that night, not a single entry. That's when it hit me. He never went to the room. My eyes drifted slow as ice toward the lounge. He was still there. Same couch, same posture, still staring at the dark TV, its glossy black screen reflecting just the faint outline of his face. My throat felt sandpaper dry. I thought about calling my manager, but hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to sound jumpy or paranoid. Maybe the system glitched. Maybe the payment didn't go through, but he'd really checked in. My mind tried to rationalize it, but my pulse was telling another story. I sat there for 15 minutes just watching him from behind the desk, listening to the hum of the lights and the soft click of the wall clock. Finally, I stood, forcing my voice steady. "Everything all right, sir?" He turned his head toward me, slow, deliberate. His eyes looked glassy, almost reflective, catching just enough light to glint. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. Then, as if the exchange never happened, he turned back to the blank TV. "Okay. Well, let me know if you need anything," I muttered, pretending calm. My smile felt stiff. My hands were shaking by the time I sat back down. At 2 a.m., I glanced up and my stomach dropped. The couch was empty. My eyes swept the lobby, my pulse thudding in my ears. Then I saw him, at the far end of the hallway near the bathrooms, half swallowed by shadow. Just standing there, perfectly still. I forced myself to look busy, fingers clattering across the keyboard though I wasn't typing anything. After a few minutes, he turned and drifted back toward the lounge. Sat down again. Same couch, same position. The unease was suffocating. That's when I finally called my manager. She answered groggily, voice thick with sleep. "If he does anything threatening, call the cops," she said. "Just keep an eye on him." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one sitting alone in the middle of the night with a stranger wandering the halls. I opened the security camera feed. The grainy footage made everything worse. On the first-floor hallway cam, I watched him walk to the end of the corridor, stop, and just stand there for minutes. Then he turned back. Later, he disappeared into the stairwell and stayed there for nearly 10. Every time I checked a camera, he was somewhere new, near the vending machines, by the elevator, lurking just beyond the reach of the lobby light. Once I caught him in the far corner of the room, half his face hidden in shadow, staring directly toward the desk. By 3:30, my nerves were shredded. I called the non-emergency police line, voice trembling as I explained that I had a man inside who didn't seem to be a guest. They said they'd send someone. I hung up and stared at the monitor again, just in time to see him move closer. He was standing maybe 15 feet away now, silent, staring, not blinking much. just watching me like he was waiting for something. I pretended to type, to breathe normal, but my heart was pounding so hard it felt audible. At 3:50, the buzzer went off. My stomach lurched, finally the cops. But it wasn't. Just another guest returning late. I unlocked the door fast, my fingers slippery with sweat. The man turned his head slowly, tracking the guest as he crossed the lobby. His eyes followed him the entire way, cold, analytical, like he was studying prey. That moment chilled me more than anything else that night. A few minutes later, I glanced at the camera again and nearly dropped the mouse. He was on the first floor now, standing outside a guest room door. Just standing there, that was it. I called 911. My voice cracked as I told the dispatcher there was a man inside who wasn't a guest and was standing outside people's rooms. "Officers are on their way," she said. I kept my eyes glued to the monitor, barely breathing. He stood at that door for a long time, unmoving, before walking back to the lobby. This time he came straight to the desk. He leaned in, his face only inches from mine. His breath smelled faintly of iron and something sour. "Got any food?" he asked, voice low, almost like a growl. My mouth was dry. Vending machines right there," I managed, pointing with a shaking hand. He smiled in a small, crooked thing that didn't touch his eyes, and turned away. At 4:10, 2 officers finally arrived. I let them in and pointed him out immediately. He was back on the couch, sitting as if none of it had happened. The cops walked over, spoke to him quietly. One took his ID, asked questions I couldn't hear. Then they stood him up and let him out. One officer came back to the desk. "Yeah, he's not a guest," he said flatly. "Credit card he gave you was stolen. No bags, no reservation. Just hanging around. We're booking him for trespassing and possession of a stolen card." When they left, I sat there behind the desk, hands trembling too hard to hold a pen. For the rest of my shift, I couldn't stop checking the cameras. Every time I blinked, I half expected his face to appear again on one of those screens, standing in a hallway watching. What haunted me most wasn't that he wasn't a guest. It was knowing he'd been here for hours, wandering those halls, standing outside doors, hiding in corners, watching me, and realizing that whatever he'd been waiting for, he almost had the chance. I never thought I'd end up working nights. If you'd asked me a couple years ago, I would have said I was a morning person, the kind who liked coffee before sunrise and a jog while the air was still damp and quiet. But life doesn't ask what you prefer. It just tells you what you can afford. And what I could afford was the overnight shift at Iron Haven Fitness, a 24/7 gym off Route 71 on the edge of Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous. The pay barely skimmed above minimum wage, but the hours were steady, and steady meant survival. My car insurance was 3 months overdue. I had medical bills from a sprained ankle that insurance refused to touch. My old apartment complex had just bumped rent again, another $100. Nights were all they had left when I applied. I told myself it wouldn't be so bad. Quiet hours, easy money, no manager breathing down my neck. And honestly, for a while that was true. By midnight, the gym exhaled. The chatter, the clank of plates, the pounding bass from playlists, all of it faded into this low, almost soothing hum. Just a handful of regulars drifted in between midnight and 3. Nora was one of them, a nurse from Miami Valley who came straight from her shift. She'd run 6, sometimes 7 miles in silence, scrubs folded neatly in her gym bag. We barely spoke beyond a nod, maybe a soft morning when she left, but she was steady. Then there were Trey and Luis, 2 powerlifters, early 30s, polite guys who carried their own Bluetooth speaker. Trey once handed me a coffee with a grin. "Figured you're dying out here, man." And Paul, the Wright State kid, 2 monsters deep before touching a dumbbell, jittering through sets like he was running from something invisible. When you work nights long enough, you start categorizing people not by names but by reasons. The ones training for something, the ones running from something, and the ones who just didn't want to be seen. I understood that. Nights gave you cover. You could exist without explanation. For me, it was about rent, bills, breathing space, survival. My shift always started at 11:30 p.m. I'd clock in, check towel bins, wipe down benches, restock the fridge with Gatorades and protein shakes. By 1 a.m., I was on autopilot, scrolling headlines, half reading, spinning in the office chair, the kind of idle motion that kept you awake. That Tuesday in January started the same. Outside it was brutal, 5 degrees, maybe less. My breath fogged white as I crossed the lot, keys rattling in my fist. Even my tires sounded stiff, like the cold had hollowed them out. Inside, the air felt thick with heat and sanitizer, the buzz of treadmills on standby breaking the silence. I poured coffee from my thermos, told myself it'd be another long but quiet night. Still, something in my gut was off, like static before a storm, faint but building. I brushed it off. By 1:30, I'd wiped down the counter again, restocked drinks, checked both locker rooms. Empty. Clean. The sound of my sneakers echoed on tile. I poured the last of my coffee into a paper cup, leaned back in the chair, eyes on the cameras. Everything calm. Nora halfway through her run, Paul vibrating from caffeine, darting between machines. Then the glass doors slid open. He came in alone. No gym bag, no sneakers, no water bottle. Just jeans, a dark puffer jacket, and a smile that looked too rehearsed. He didn't scan a card, didn't even glance at the reader. I stood up, clearing my throat. "Hey man, you got a membership card?" He shook his head, that same smile pinned in place. "Nah, just waiting on my cousin. Said he'd meet me here." His voice was smooth, but his eyes were restless, moving fast, taking in the layout, the exits, every body in sight. "Okay," I said slowly. "That's fine. Visitors can wait up front, but you can't go past the lobby." "All right. Yeah, no problem." He nodded, smile stretching wider. But instead of sitting, he walked to the windows by the treadmills, hands deep in his jacket pockets. No phone, no watch, just standing there, watching. At first, I wanted to believe him. Maybe his cousin really was late. Maybe he was just bored. But the longer he stayed, the more wrong it felt, like a pressure building quietly under the skin. 15 minutes passed, then 20. He didn't move like someone waiting. He moved like someone circling, measuring the space. His hands never left his jacket pockets. His shoes scuffed softly against the rubber floor as he looped around the perimeter, eyes gliding over every face like he was memorizing them. Twice he passed by Nora on the treadmill. The second time she caught my reflection in the mirror and raised her brows. "What's his deal?" I gave a half shrug, pretending it was nothing, but my chest was tightening, heartbeat drumming louder than the faint pop song playing overhead. Eventually, he wandered back toward the front desk. "You always work this shift?" he asked casually, leaning on the counter. I forced a laugh. "Nah, just covering. Usually mornings." "Lie. I always work nights." He tilted his head slightly, studying me the way someone studies a menu. "What time you get off?" 9, I lied again. "Long one tonight." He nodded, slow, like he was filing that away. Then he drifted off, his gaze brushing over Paul, then Nora, the way you glance at exits. Around 2:40, the doors slid open with a hiss and Trey and Luis came in, their breath still fogging from the cold. They gave me a nod, trudged toward the free weights, and I saw it. The stranger's head turning, eyes flicking toward them, evaluating. Bigger guys, a threat. His posture shifted, shoulders tense for just a beat before loosening again. A few minutes later, he strolled back to the front. "Guess he bailed on me," he said, flashing that same too bright smile. "Have a good one." Then he slipped out into the night. I walked over to the front windows, pretending to check the thermostat. But I wasn't checking anything. I was watching. He didn't walk to a car, didn't head toward the street. He drifted to the far corner of the lot, the dark side where the lamps didn't reach, and just stood there, swallowed by shadow. My stomach dropped like a stone. The rest of the shift, I made myself busy, wiped things already clean, rearranged the towel bin 3 times, pretended it was nothing. But every time the doors whispered open, my pulse jumped like static in my veins. By 7 a.m., the gym was thinning out. Nora left first, sweat glistening on her forehead, earbuds dangling from one hand. Trey and Luis followed, laughing quietly about some podcast. By 7:30, it was just me. I clocked out, zipped my jacket, slung my bag over my shoulder, and stepped into the brittle cold. My car sat at the far end of the lot, breath of exhaust ghosts curling from a nearby vent. That's when I saw it. Another car idling in the corner. No headlights, just a soft orange glow catching on the vapor drifting from its tailpipe. My chest tightened. I slowed, forcing my steps steady. Keys already in hand, thumb hovering over the unlock button. 10 feet away, I clicked it. My car lights blinked once, slicing through the dark. I climbed in fast, locked the doors, and started the engine. The idling car's headlights flashed once, quick, Deliberate. Not a mistake, like it was saying, I see you. My breath hitched. I didn't wait. I threw the car into reverse, tires squealing against ice, the curb scraping as I sped out of the lot. At the first red light, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I called Maddie, my best friend. She answered groggy, voice thick with sleep. Jesus, you sound freaked out. What happened? Something's off, I said. I think someone's following me. Can I crash at your place? Yeah, just get here safe, okay? I drove in circles for half an hour, looping through side streets, checking my mirrors until my eyes burned. No headlights behind me, but I could still feel them, like a presence sitting just behind my left shoulder. Eventually, I pulled into a Speedway gas station under blinding white floodlights. Parked there, engine running, pulse hammering like it wanted out. By the time I reached Maddie's, she didn't ask questions. She just handed me a blanket and let me crash on the couch, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that single flick of headlights, blink and gone. The next night, I told my manager, Bill, older guy, ex-Marine. All blunt edges and no small talk. He didn't laugh. Didn't say I was paranoid. Just led me into the office, pulled up the security feed, and there he was. Same jacket, same pacing, same too calm smile when he talked to me. Bill fast-forwarded. The man never touched a single piece of equipment. Just looped the floor, scanning, always watching. Then Bill clicked to the footage from the following night. The stranger came back, didn't come inside. Just stood in that same far corner of the lot, hands in his pockets, face tilted toward the gym. Nearly an hour. My chest went cold. We called the police. 2 officers showed up 20 minutes later, took my statement, asked Bill to save the footage. Said they'd file a report and add patrols, though I could tell from their tone it didn't mean much. Unless he did something, they couldn't help. As they were leaving, one officer grabbed the front door handle and froze. There was a folded note tucked into the metal. No envelope. Just one line in blocky handwriting. You looked cold last night. I could have kept you warm. My blood turned to ice. They bagged it as evidence, promised extra patrols, but none of it mattered. The next morning, I asked Bill to move me to day shifts. He didn't even argue. Months later, I still can't shake it. Even now, when I pull into a parking lot at night, I check the corners first. I lock the doors the second I sit down. I never saw him again. But sometimes parked outside a gas station or my apartment, I see a flash in the dark. Not bright, just enough to say, I see you. And I know now, he was never waiting for his cousin. I never thought working the night shift at a motel would mess with my head the way it did. My name's Aaron, 29, not a people person, and definitely not someone built for quiet this heavy. For the past year, I've been the overnight clerk at the Maple Leaf Inn, a small family-run place off Highway 72 about 20 minutes outside Ridgway, Missouri. It's the kind of stop people forget by sunrise, mostly long-haul truckers and families too worn out to keep driving. I told myself it was temporary. I only took the job because the lumber mill cut staff and I got caught in the downsizing. A couple months of scraping by, bills piling up, and suddenly temporary sounded like a luxury. My cousin's buddy owned the place. Easy money, he said. Nobody bothers you. Just check people in, answer the phone if it rings, and keep an eye on things. I figured, hell, why not? I'm not built for small talk. Smiling when I don't mean it feels like lifting weights with my face. Nights suited me fine. I could sit in the back office, drink bad coffee, maybe watch a game replay, scroll until my eyes blurred. The Maple Leaf's small. 2 floors, 20 rooms, tops. The office smells faintly like dust and coffee grounds, with floral carpet from the 90s and a brass bell that's lost its shine. The coffee machine sputters like it's gasping for air. Behind the desk is a narrow hallway that leads to my little cave of an office/lounge. A sagging couch, a desk covered in old check-in slips, a mini fridge humming louder than the heater, and a small wall-mounted TV. A speaker back there gives a soft ding when someone rings the bell up front so I never miss a guest. For months it was easy, quiet to the point of dullness. The loudest things were the heater kicking on, the tired buzz of fluorescent lights, and an occasional door click from a guest stumbling in late. But silence has teeth. After a while, it starts biting at the edges of your sanity. Every creak in the floorboards, every distant rattle in the pipes, every muffled thump from the vending machine starts to feel like something alive. You tell yourself it's normal, but nights stretch longer than they should, and soon your thoughts echo louder than the walls. Then came that Tuesday in late October, the night the quiet turned wrong. It was 1:50 a.m. I was stretched out on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, half asleep. When the bell rang, the sound split the air like glass breaking. I jumped so hard I nearly flung my phone. Jesus, I breathed out, heart thudding as I got up. The hallway felt longer than usual as I walked toward the front. The bell was still trembling on the counter when I stepped into the lobby, but no one was there. "Hello?" I called, voice bouncing off the glass. The parking lot outside glowed under harsh sodium lights, empty except for 5 cars belonging to checked-in guests. The highway beyond was just black silence, no headlights, no movement. I stood there uneasy, listening for footsteps, the swoosh of the door, anything. Nothing came. Maybe someone rang the bell and bolted. It happens. Drunks, pranksters, travelers who think twice. I lingered another moment, then shrugged it off, went back down the hall, poured myself a cup of bitter coffee and sat at the desk instead of the couch. The cup steamed faintly, the air stale with that faint metallic motel smell. 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. Sharper this time, 2 quick hits. I shot up, moving fast, my chair scraping against the floor. I was in the lobby within seconds, empty again. The hairs on my arms lifted. All right, I muttered under my breath. Someone's screwing with me. I pushed through the glass doors. The cold night air cut straight through my shirt, sharp enough to sting. The lot stretched silent and still, the hum of the lamps the only sound. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, trembling slightly in my hand as I swept it across the empty pavement, scanning the cars, the shadows, the edge of the woods beyond the fence. Not a soul in sight. Just the cars parked in their neat lines, the damp pavement glistening under the amber lights with no footprints, no breeze stirring the trees, no flicker of movement by the vending machine. The silence was thick, heavy, the kind that presses against your ears. I swallowed and went back inside, this time settling behind the front desk. If someone was screwing with me, I'd see it happen. The lobby was dim, lit only by a single lamp near the guest chairs, its yellow glow pooling weakly across the carpet. The soda machine hummed in the corner, the sound oddly loud in the quiet. I leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on that damned brass bell. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The ticking wall clock felt louder with each second, each click pulling me closer to sleep. My head drooped once, twice. Ding. My eyes flew open. I saw it this time. A pale hand, thin and colorless, slid up from beneath the counter and pressed the bell. "Jesus Christ," I yelled, stumbling back so hard the chair legs screeched and nearly flipped. The hand vanished in an instant. My breath caught in my chest. Whoever or whatever it was had been right there, inches from me. I bolted for the hallway, shoes slapping against the carpet, heart hammering so hard I thought I might black out. I slammed the office door, twisted the lock until it clicked and backed away, gasping, staring at the wood grain like it might splinter open. The space under the desk in the lobby flashed in my mind, barely a few feet wide. Someone had been crouched there, hidden in that narrow pocket of darkness while I sat a few feet away, completely unaware. My hands were shaking as I turned to the wall of monitors. 4 feeds, 2 showing the lot, 1 the hallway, 1 the lobby. On the lobby feed, the tipped-over chair lay still, exactly where I'd left it. Nothing else moved. Then, slowly, a dark shape began to rise in the corner of the frame, right behind the counter. I froze. A hood covered most of the face, but a faint reflection from the security light caught a pair of eyes. They were fixed on the camera. Fixed on me. Holy shit, I breathed, voice cracking. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I dialed 911. "Aswan, what's your emergency?" There's somebody in the motel," I whispered, keeping my eyes glued to the screen. They're in the lobby, hiding behind the front desk. Are you safe right now? The dispatcher asked, calm but sharp. I'm locked in